Sure.
All right, you're all set, Chairman.
Thank you. All right, we're going to call the meeting to order. This meeting is being conducted virtually. The public will be given the opportunity to participate remotely through the advertised Zoom link or choice of phone numbers identified in the public meeting notice. Public should use the raise hand feature in Zoom or *9 if participating by telephone to indicate they would like to be recognized to speak. Meeting and application documents have been made available at hillsboroughNJ.civicclerk.com in accordance with the public meeting notice. Applicants will be presenting remotely and will identify themselves before testifying. Let's please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag, the United States of America, the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This meeting has been duly advertised according to Section 5 of the Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, Public Law 1975, the Sunshine Law. Notice of the 2020 annual meeting schedule has been provided to the officially designated newspapers, the Township Clerk, posted on the bulletin board at the Hillsborough Township Municipal Complex, and posted on the Township's website. Additional notice has been provided to communicate that this meeting is being conducted in according to the Governor's executive orders and pursuant to Public Law 2020 C11, which allows for meetings to be conducted electronically. I will do the roll call. Louise Wilkins. Joanne Bertolini. Not here. Neil Julian.
Here.
Michael Foley.
Here.
I am here. Thomas Almendinger. Stephen Mastropolito.
Here.
Dr. Abrupta.
Here.
And Committeeman Delcor is not here. And township staff participating is David Maskey, Planning Director, and Fred Kinsler, IT staff. We have no meeting minutes to consider. Mr. Kinsler, if we could open up for if there's any business from the floor that's not on the agenda.
Sure. If anybody from the public has any matters not on the agenda, please raise your hand. If called on and asked to unmute, please state your name and address for the record, please. I see none, Chairman. You may proceed.
Thank you very
Oh,
much.
wait a minute. Let me take that back. We have a late one. We have a phone dial in. If you could please unmute yourself. State your name and address for the record.
Hello?
Are you? Yeah, there you are.
Okay, hi. This is Maria Janusic, 720 East Freck Avenue, Manville. I'm also a Hillsborough Township property owner, Block 86, Lot 3. I have some questions. There was a meeting held on October 26th of the Environmental Commission, and one of the applicants was SunPower Corporation. And I see on the agenda that they had applied for C bulk variances and waivers. So now who makes a decision on these C bulk variances and waivers? Now the waiver included a submission waiver from submitting an environmental impact study. Who authorizes that, whether they get the waiver or not?
Maria, I did not catch your last name, please.
Janusic, Janucik.
UCIK. And what was your address again? I'm sorry.
720 East Freck Avenue, Manville, New Jersey.
And what was the name of the application of the application that you're referencing?
SunPower Corporation.
SunPower.
And then in
Yes.
parentheses, it's Comcast Cable.
Correct. So SunPower, I believe, was a planning board application. Mr. Maskey, is that correct?
That's correct. Planning board passed on it the other night.
So it
But
was,
this was also before the Environmental Commission on Monday, October 26th.
that's
Right,
correct. We
the-
did hear that, and we provided our comments to the planning board. And the Environmental Commission is an advisory board to both the Board of Adjustments and the Planning Board. We make our recommendations and they take it from there. And Mr. Maskey, you
Okay.
said that it was approved?
That's correct. It was approved the other night.
Okay, because I'm seeing here on the agenda that there were C bulk variances, which means more than one. And also waivers, including a submission waiver. So waivers would mean there was also more than one, more than just this waiver. I don't remember all of those waivers and all of those variances being discussed at the planning board meeting. So I was wondering, is there a written report from the Environmental Commission regarding this, or where is the input from the Environmental Commission recorded?
So the Environmental Commission provides a report to the Planning Board or the Board of Adjustments for every application that we review. And that would be, that should be in the file, and you could probably get that from the planning department. if you wanted
So
to.
that would be available now, or you have to wait for meeting minutes? How does that work?
Mr. Maskey,
That's available now.
it's available.
So the report from the
It was
Environmental
posted-
Commission is,
It was posted on the website in preparation for the planning.
But Mr. Maskey said that the planning board saw that this past Thursday and it was approved. The application was approved. I don't know.
the application.
I don't know whether, if the variances or the waivers were granted. But they heard it last week.
Okay, so I understand because I was on that meeting. The application was approved, but I was just wondering where the input is from the Environmental Commission, because like I said, it does say that there were waivers requested, more than one, and also C bulk variances, which was more than one. So you said there is a report available from the Environmental Commission in regard to that application.
That is correct.
Okay. I also have a question regarding I've never been to an Environmental Commission meeting, so I'm going to ask beginner questions. Are there any specific qualifications that the individuals who are on the Environmental Commission are required to have?
The majority of, first you have to be a resident of Hillsborough Township. That's the one requirement. Most of the people on this commission have some sort of environmental background and work in the environmental field. The majority of the people do. And I must say that I've been on this commission for many years. And this is one of the best group of people that I've worked with on this commission. Everybody brings something very special to this table. Everybody has their own, whether it's stormwater or wetlands. We have naturalists, we have LSRPs. They're all very, very, it's a very good group of people, dynamic group of people that work together.
Okay, and I'm sorry, are you the chairperson I'm speaking to?
Yes, I am chair.
Deborah, is that your name?
Yes, Boyer.
Okay, Boyer. Okay, and so I believe Hillsborough Township has an ordinance regarding wetlands and critical areas. Am I correct on that?
Yes, I believe so. Yes.
Okay, so are the members of the Environmental Commission also familiar with this Hillsborough Township ordinance regarding wetlands and critical areas, so that they would know when something is brought up, how the application pertains to the ordinance or vice versa?
Correct. Yes.
Yes, okay. And also the members of the Environmental Commission are familiar with the State of New Jersey Wetlands Protection Act and those requirements?
Some of the members are very knowledgeable of that. Not everyone is very knowledgeable of that. That, as I said before, everybody brings something very special to the table. We have wetlands people, we have LSRPs. I'm an air specialist. Everybody brings a little something different to the table. So yes, we do have people that are very knowledgeable about wetlands.
Okay, what is LSRP? What is that?
An LSRP is a licensed site remediation person, and they're licensed by the state of New Jersey to do site remediation work.
Okay. Now, when there's an application before the Environmental Commission that involves wetlands, do any of the members of the Hillsborough Township Environmental Commission actually go to the site to kind of see what it looks like?
We do often do site walks if we feel it's necessary, or if it's a large enough application, or we have adequate time.
Okay. Okay, I think that's all the not pertaining to the application questions that I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Anybody else from the public have matters not on the agenda? Okay, I see none, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Kinsler. All right, so the first application that we're going to hear is Campus Associates, LLC, Weiss.
For the record, Mark Policastro, attorney for the applicant. Thank you, Chair, for having us this evening. I have with us Mike Ford, who will present immediately in terms of the concept plan and the plan before the board. Mr. Ford, are you there? Is your mic on?
Yes, I'm on.
Would you please state your name for the record?
Yeah, Michael Ford, F-O-R-D, licensed engineer with Van Cleef Engineering. Been before this board a few times.
Great. Please proceed with your presentation with respect to the plan before the planning board.
Okay. I'm going to share screen. Can everybody see this?
Yes,
Yes.
very good, Mike. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. The application for consideration by the Environmental Commission is a pending site plan application before the planning board regarding a 13.8 acre tract of land at the end of Campus Drive. Campus Drive is a dead-end cul-de-sac off of Route 206 north. You'll see in this exhibit to familiarize yourself with the location directly in front of the site or between the site proper and Route 206 is Temple Bethel. And just north or on the left-hand side of the page is the jug handle of Route 206 at Duke's Parkway West, which would lead you to Duke Farms. The site is highlighted on this exhibit in yellow. It's a 13.8 acre tract of land in the I3 zone, the industrial zone, and was the subject of an overlay zone for affordable housing. The site plan is for that affordable housing project, some 96 units, of which 24 are affordable housing units. It'll be accommodated in 4 apartment buildings and a clubhouse. Before I go to the proposed project exhibit, I'd like to highlight Campus Drive access, which I'm highlighting with the hand now, is off of Route 206. At that juncture of Route 206, it's already the improved section. So that is, there's only a right in and right out of Campus Drive. So all of the site traffic will exit Campus Drive via Route 206 and have to head in a northbound direction towards Somerville and Manville. And then if they were to want to proceed in a southbound direction, they could immediately take this jug handle just north of the site and then proceed southbound on Route 206. You also see on this exhibit Harvard Way, which is part of an overall industrial park that was planned in the 90s for this area and an existing industrial office building just south of our site. To the west, or at the top of the page, are existing residential community. And then along the rear of the property is a major sanitary sewer trunk line that services a great portion of the township. This property will have access to that public sewer, as well as the public water that's available in Campus Drive. There's also an existing stood open water drainage way along the rear of the property, and a drainage pipe that was put in as part of overall drainage improvements by the township in the mid-70s. And we're well aware of ongoing concerns and issues with the drainage, not maybe at this location, but further on downstream and in the community to our west. And as you'll hear during our description of the property, we've gone above and beyond the stormwater management mitigation requirements required by the regulations for the site. And perhaps now is a good time to flip to our next exhibit, which is the proposed conditions. And this is a colorized version of the site plan that was submitted as part of the application. Again, you'll see the Campus Drive, which will be extended into the site, a parking lot circulating through the site. And this is the most westerly portion of the site, the easterly portion of the site adjacent to the residence, some 230 feet wide or better, will be preserved in a conservation easement to service as a buffer to that neighborhood, while the minimum required buffer by the ordinance is 100 feet. You've just heard me say that the proposed buffer that'll be provided in this area is in excess of 200 feet, more than twice the required buffer. That is also encompassing a substantial portion of the site wetlands that'll be preserved within that open space that is virtually half of the site. Of the 13.8 acres, less than 6 acres of it will be disturbed by the project. This is the area I'm highlighting now. I've stated in the introduction, there'll be 4 apartment buildings. These are the larger beige or brown buildings that are shown on the exhibit. And then there's a 5th structure, which is a small clubhouse adjacent to some recreational facilities that'll service the community. The proposed vegetation within the open space area will be preserved to the greatest extent possible. And you'll see that there's some supplemental plantings that are proposed within the perimeter, again, supplementing that buffer that will be preserved for our neighbors to the top of the page or to the east. On-site parking in accordance with the residential site improvement standards will be provided. This is exclusively a residential apartment complex in accordance with that zoning that provides for the affordable housing. There's no commercial element to this. With regards to impervious coverage, while the underlying zone, the I3 zone, would have permitted an industrial or office type use with a permitted impervious coverage up to 60% of the site. The zoning adopted for the affordable housing residential project that you see this evening caps that impervious coverage at 30%, and our total proposed impervious coverage is less than 23% of the site. So you can see that as opposed to the past zoning or the underlying zoning permitted for the site of I3, which would permit up to 60% impervious coverage, we're substantially below that with the less than 23% impervious coverage. I've already described utilities, sanitary sewer. There's actually a line that exists along our northerly tract boundary that services not only the Temple Bethel, but the old daycare right at the intersection of Dukes Parkway West, which was recently approved for a canine resort. That public sewer will service this project as well. And then the public water in Campus Drive will be extended onto the site to service the site. With regards to stormwater management, we're proposing to utilize an underground stormwater management facility with a collection system throughout the parking area and immediately adjacent to the apartment buildings, with the roof leaders from the apartment buildings connected to that stormwater management facility, all leading to a sizable underground stormwater management system that then discharges via a pipe directly connecting to that storm drainage facility that exists at the rear of the property. The stormwater management I described earlier, as many of you are familiar, by code and regulations, we're required to reduce the 2, 10, and 100-year storm by percentages of the existing discharge from the site. The developed area here, or to be developed, would have a restriction that we reduce the 2-year storm peak flow from that area by 50%, the 10-year by 75%, and the 100-year reduction required is 80%. We've provided for an on-site underground stormwater management system that reduces that even further, those peak flows even further than that which was required, those reductions. So our 2-year or our 1-year storm is reduced not by the 50%, but actually down to 20%, 22% of our existing discharge. For the 10-year storm, our peak flow is reduced to 31% of our existing peak flow discharge, while the 75 is what's required, so substantially less than what's required by code. And then for the 100-year storm, our peak flow is reduced to 58% of the existing discharge, while 80% is required. With regards to stormwater quality, we're providing for some on-site porous pavement areas, and there'll be a mechanical treatment device that is one of those underground mechanical treatment devices with filters in it to provide for in excess of the required 80% TSS or total suspended solids reductions. With regards to pending applications and agency approvals required for this project, in addition to the Hillsborough Township Planning Board, we've made application to the Somerset County Planning Board and received a favorable letter from them dated September 16th, 2020, just highlighting the requirement for the payment of the fee for recycling containers or addressing recycling. In this case, since it's a rental project, it's envisioned that in addition to the on-site trash enclosures, those enclosures will address recycling requirements as well. And we wouldn't rely on the county for recycling, but would handle that through a private waste hauler similar to the mainstream waste. We've already received approval from the Somerset Union Soil Conservation District for our soil erosion and sediment control plan. That was dated September 10th, 2020. And as I stated earlier, less than half of the total 13.8 acre tract will be disturbed. That's less than 6 acres will be disturbed. So we're minimizing our disturbance. We have a pending application with DEP regarding wetlands, and we're also addressing recent comments from the DEP regarding flood hazard area verification and riparian zone verification. And with regards to wetlands, We have a valid freshwater wetland letter of interpretation, and we're proposing minimal disturbance for the connection of the on-site stormwater to the existing stormwater pipe at the rear of the property. And that's in a wetland area. That requires a general permit. And then we're also proposing some wetland buffer averaging where small portions of the existing wetland buffer, not the wetlands, but the wetland buffer are to be disturbed, but then they would be compensated for that disturbance by expanding the wetland buffer in other areas. And I'm highlighting that now in the exhibit, these small areas.
Mr. Ford, it's Fred Kinsler, IT. Maybe
Yes.
if you could maybe hit Control plus plus to, that will enlarge that. If you click in there, it might enlarge that a little. There you go. That might
There you
make it
go.
easier for people to see. Thank you. Sorry for
Thank
interrupting.
you.
No, that's great to have an IT guy.
And you can hit Control minus minus to get it smaller again if you need to.
Okay. So now,
Sorry for the interruption.
no, perfect. So here's the small portion of wetland disturbance for the stormwater connection. That's less than 3,000 square feet or less than 1/10 of an acre, certainly. And then you can see here a buffer compensation or buffer would be widened at this location, reduced slightly at this location behind building number 1, again, increased slightly behind building number 2. And these little areas of buffer averaging are typical of a wetland buffer averaging approval. And that's subject to DEP's approval. We also have or will provide a NJDEP treatment works approval application that would be processed through the local sewage authority, the Hillsborough Township Municipal Utilities Authority, and the SRVSA, the Somerset Raritan Valley Sewage Authority, for the connection to the existing sewer main along our northerly boundary. And the applicant actually has already paid for and reserved sewage capacity. And that was with regards to a project that was previously approved by the Hillsborough Township Planning Board about 20 years ago. And actually construction was started and then halted for a warehouse on this site in accordance with the I3 zone. Tree mitigation. We are proposing tree mitigation in the form of 351 trees proposed, while 597 are removed, and those removed trees are in this area of disturbance. And much of that area is actually area that was previously disturbed as part of the prior site plan approval for the industrial building that was started and then halted. But since then, over these last 20 years, early successional growth in cedars has grown up in that area. What we're proposing for the tree mitigation plantings is throughout the site, but also to focus those in the areas where there was some prior disturbance as part of that prior site plan approval, to infill the existing vegetation and more mature trees at the rear or east portion of the site. And that would be 351 trees. This is on the tree mitigation plan. And we are applying for and requesting, in accordance with the ordinance through the tree mitigation section, the economic hardship waiver. And that is that ceiling of tree mitigation at 1.5% of the overall total construction costs.
Mr. Ford, can I ask a question?
Oh, yeah,
So-
I think I've gone probably too long, and it's time to pause, and you let me know if you want me to take the shared screen off to see everybody.
Can I just ask a real quick question relative to the trees? You can continue on. This is great. Am I on? I am, right?
Yeah.
How many trees are you required to replace?
The straight math replacement would be 1,194. And that's because there's no such thing as replacing one-to-one. So by default, the 597 disturbed in this area here would relate to that tree mitigation requirement.
And that the balance of what you're not putting in is the hardship waiver.
That's correct.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Go ahead.
With regards to Campus Drive, what we're suggesting to the planning board is, since we're the last occupant at the end of Campus Drive, while there's ability to accommodate a cul-de-sac at the end of Campus Drive, which is really not that long, we're suggesting just a straight in driveway, which would still provide for circulation, certainly adequate for emergency vehicles, fire trucks, but without that additional pavement of a dead-end cul-de-sac. But certainly if the planning board were want to have that installed, it would be within the public right of way. We could accommodate that as well. I think that really highlights the elements of the project.
So what variances or waivers are you applying for?
Okay. There is a technical requirement for the height of the clubhouse. The clubhouse roof proper is within the 20-foot max required height for the accessory structure, but it has a cupola or a larger portion of the roof that extends above that, so we're seeking a variance for that. There also is a technical requirement for landscaping on all three sides of trash enclosures, but since many of these, the two trash enclosures I'm highlighting now along our northerly track boundary are immediately adjacent to parking spaces, we're asking for a waiver for the landscaping alongside of those trash enclosures. And then also, we're proposing a site sign, which I'm highlighting now, which is right at the entrance of the project, which is limited to a 4-foot high sign. We're proposing a sign 6 feet 4 inches high, but much of that exceedance of the height, and we'll describe this to the planning board certainly in detail as part of our justification for the relief, is part of I'll say the pedestal or the bottom of this fixed sign. And then lastly, there is a technical restriction in the ordinance for any kind of residential project to have a max disturbance of 20% of the on-site woods. Since this essentially is an entirely wooded site, we exceed that 20%, and we're at 38.3% of the total wooded area disturbance with the site. So those are the substantive, and that was all part of our narrative that was submitted as part of the application.
Thank you.
Yes.
Does any commission members have any questions for the applicant?
Yeah, Mike, this is Chris Abrupta. I want to know about groundwater recharge. What are you doing for that? I know you had a recharge requirement. I didn't hear you talk about that when you mentioned stormwater management.
Oh, yes. The underground stormwater management facility will have a recharge element to it.
Well, this facility, this basin here in the center, on the plan you have labeled impermeable liner.
Right. That's a misprint. It would be a stone bed.
I think
It'll
this.
allow for recharge.
I think the piece on the bottom, that little piece of permeable pavement, I guess that's the northwest corner. Is that just where you're recharging down there? That's what it seems like in your plan.
Right.
It's a
Right.
1620. Is that the square footage of that?
Right. That's
Okay.
correct.
Okay. The other thing that I noticed was you're using a couple pre-manufactured treatment devices to get your TSS removal, your 80% removal. And filter devices. And you know in your O&M manual that Appendix C has manufacturer specifications on how often those filters have to be replaced. That's not in Appendix C. that's not in the O&M manual at all. So the manufacturer specifications for those devices aren't in your operation and maintenance manual. So that needs to get fixed. But more importantly, who's going to be responsible for replacing those filters on an annual basis? They're very expensive usually. That's what's my concern.
Right. Yeah, this is a private facility, so it'll be the responsibility. It's a rental unit, so it'll be the applicant and owner's responsibility for all the on-site maintenance.
And then he'll file a annual report. He or she will file an annual report with the town that all the stormwater facilities are being maintained on a regular basis, right? Like required by the township.
That's correct.
Okay. That's all I got. Thanks.
Thanks. Thank you. Chris.
Hey, Deb, it's Neil.
Yes, Neil.
So, yeah, Chris, I'm glad you had an opportunity to take a look at some of those things, because when we met with the applicant for conceptual design with the planning board, there was definitely a lot of the neighbors that are on the perimeter of the border that came to the meeting and were concerned, specifically about stormwater management and the wetlands. So I vividly remember the meeting. I vividly remember their concern. So I just wanted to just impress that to everybody tonight to kind of go through those two topics in detail if we can. I know, obviously, Chris already spoke to some, but I was wondering if anybody else also had any comments, because it was a concern.
I think Mr. Ford is right. I think they really exceed what's required by the stormwater regulations. My only concern with this is that anytime you have underground detention and these manufactured treatment devices and even the permeable pavement, there's a lot of maintenance requirements associated with that. The permeable pavement has to be vacuumed 4 times a year. The manufactured treatment devices are supposed to be inspected after heavy storm events and cleaned out. Probably the filters probably have to be changed at least once a year. And then the underground detention, that has to be inspected on a regular basis too and maintained. And I think the cost estimate that they had in the O&M manual was $10,000. I don't know if that was the annual cost or it costs every 2 to 3 years. It's kind of hard to tell what they were referring to as far as that cost is concerned. But that's my main concern, is that stuff gets neglected. After the first couple of years, the surrounding property owners could have issues. So it's a township's responsibility to make sure the owner is maintaining his facility. The township has an ordinance requiring the property owner to submit a report on an annual basis. I know Van Cleef Engineering does a lot of these reports for local property owners who have stormwater facilities to make sure that they're being maintained properly. And I believe the township has the ability to fine the property owner if they're not being maintained properly too. So I think I'm fairly confident in that. I can't speak to the wetlands, but I think the stormwater system seems to be above and beyond what's required.
So just for the record, then, it would be important to put in our report about your concerns about the upkeep of the maintenance then.
Yeah, but I would put it there. It's certainly on the property owner, but it's also on the township to ensure that the property owner is doing that. So it's a double responsibility here, So and I think that probably needs to go on a report that the property owner has to understand that what's involved in the maintenance here, and it is spelled out somewhat in the maintenance manual that specifications of those pre-manufactured treatment device should be included in there, because that'll talk about how often the filters need to be changed, and there really should be a cost of what those filters are in that manual, so the property owner knows what he or she is getting into. And then I think the township engineer also needs to understand that this is one site that he needs to make sure he gets a report from every year that's being maintained properly. So that's a little part of the township too.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Chris.
Neil, can I ask a question? Do the,
Sure.
if anybody can ask that question, do those property owners at the rear of the site, is there an issue with stormwater and flooding and back there?
Yeah.
There
I mean,
is.
I shouldn't say that because I'm not sure, but there was testimony that night that, you know, some of them had issues already, but I can't be the one, you know, to know because I didn't go there and look at it, but I could tell you that there was concern and it did get brought up that some of the neighbors did have, you know, existing issues
Okay.
from what I remember.
Okay.
Yeah, I grew up around here. There's always a lot of flood. I think it's Johansson Ave there. Is that the street?
Mm-hmm.
I actually had some friends who have houses there and their backyards flooded quite often. And I imagine it's associated with these wetlands here. And it just, water just sits in there. So that's always been an issue back there. And you have the Raritan River off to the north a little bit. So that doesn't help the situation either. So.
But didn't Mr.
Really
Ford
concerned by the
say that
property.
at the back of the site, there is a drainage pipe back there?
Yeah, there's both. There's
Both what?
there's an open channel or a
Open
state open
channel?
water
Okay.
and a pipe. As part of our due diligence, in development of the project plans, I actually met with Tom Ballinger, the assistant township engineer, who is familiar with this area, has been, with the township for many years. And he expressed the drainage issues that have been historically reported to his office by residents. And that was another reason for our endeavoring to not just meet the regulations, but to provide for a robust, if you will, stormwater management system that, didn't just meet the 50% reduction in peak flow at 49%, but provided for some additional attenuation, if you will, above and beyond what's required.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So the wetlands that are all there in the back and to the south side of the property, is that all heavily wooded?
Yes, I can go. This exhibit is an aerial, I think it's with leaves off, so you don't see all the trees, but this whole area here is all wooded at the rear of the property.
Okay. So can I ask why the trees were not extended to that last building back there? Why did you sort of stop it?
This building here, building
Yeah,
one?
I mean, there's no trees buffering that. Is
Right,
there,
why are
is
we-
it heavily treed there now, or why is
Correct.
that not there?
Yeah, that's in we, as part of our project plan development, we did site-specific surveys of existing trees and locations. And that's an area where the trees are, weren't disturbed as part of that, construction that was started, some time ago. So we're leaving that preserved as is, and it provides for a buffer today.
Thank you.
And Mike Foley here. So the dark green is the delineated wetland as per the 2017 LOI, is that correct?
Actually, the dark green is existing wooded areas and the lighter green is the lawn areas. I'll trace the wetland line now with my hand. I'm starting in the upper right-hand corner, Mike. You see
Oh, right, yep,
see the flags
Okay.
there?
right,
Yeah. And then
So,
the
I mean-
50-foot buffer is just off of that.
gotcha. So it looks like most of your plantings, obviously, maybe to help answer Debbie's question, it stops at that second building because you're planting in the upland areas, obviously.
Right, in the buffer that's right now already previously disturbed and
Right.
is, supplemental plantings, correct?
Can you just go over the list? I assume you're getting a, the wetland IP, flood hazard area. Can you go over the listing of permits that you're submitting or will be submitting?
Yeah, we have pending the wetland general permits for this. The only disturbance in the regulated areas really are this stormwater pipe connection along our northerly boundary and the buffer averaging to accommodate the minimal disturbance along the peripheral of the wetland buffers. With regards to flood hazard, we're looking to establish the flood hazard area limit and the riparian zones associated with the state open water. And then to the extent we would need an IP for the disturbance of the riparian zone, because that state open water is right at the rear of the property, and the riparian zone would be temporarily disturbed by that stormwater connection as well.
And are
Can I ask what an IP is?
Individual permit,
Thank you. As opposed to a general permit.
correct.
correct?
Yeah.
So it looks like you're getting a freshwater wetland GP2 and a GP10A and transition area waiver,
Oh,
right, Mike?
thank you. There is also a small portion of wetlands that'll be disturbed as part of the extension of Campus Drive. That's the 10A.
10A, yeah, for a
Yes.
short crossing.
Correct.
For your flood hazard IP, I guess so you're gonna get the flood hazard verified, obviously. But regarding riparian zone mitigation, are you anticipating to have to mitigate for riparian zone impacts?
No,
So you're below the table 11.1 thresholds?
it would be less than, but I think it's, the table, the temporary disturbance for the stormwater disturbance over here.
That's the only
Right.
portion that's within the riparian zone that's going to be impacted?
Correct. All the rest of the riparian zone is right immediately adjacent to that state open water along our rear property boundary.
Oh, right,
And
okay.
and we had some review comments already from the state DP staff that asked that this drainage feature here that extends up into the property
Right,
be
that's my next
identified
question.
as a state open water with a riparian zone. And you can see, actually on this exhibit, we highlight the 50-foot riparian zone there where none of it's being disturbed and part of it is being revegetated by those plantings. Right here.
Oh, okay, so I can't read that. That's, so along that tributary is 50-foot riparian zone on each side?
Correct.
Excuse me, Mr. Ford, this is Fred Kensler. If you want to zoom in, you can keep going.
Zoom.
And then just, you can keep going if you want. There you go.
Yeah.
Is there a associated sheet, Mike, that you know offhand on the plan set? That shows
this-
that riparian buffer? I'm looking for it, but
Yeah, the
Maybe I missed
riparian
it.
buffer, the grading plan would have the riparian buffer along the rear. There was also, as part of our DEP permit application, DEP is pretty particular now
oh yeah,
with what's shown on the permit plan. So even the wetland permits are not shown on the same plan as the
right.
flood hazard area permits. So we're separating them out.
Yep.
So that might actually be in a different file at the township.
Okay.
We CC them with our submittals, but
Okay.
and
No,
then
that,
this-
yeah,
this
fine.
area right here was actually just, since we made the submittal and application to the township in August, I guess, our most recent, the DP had this comment in September. So this exhibit is, I'll say, right off the press, most current exhibit. This additional SOW.
And so they're going to consider that tributary, was that unnamed tributary to Duke's Brook or something?
Correct.
So they're,
Well, I think this all is not really, it doesn't flow in a westerly direction toward Duke's Brook. I think this all drains to the north, and then through that community to our east, eventually to the Raritan River as Mr. Abrupta, Dr. Abrupta, identified earlier. That's true. It's all drains
Well-
to the north.
The DEP mapping showing it as a labeled unnamed tributary to Duke's Brook draining to the southwest.
Right. In this area, you really have to do site-specific studies like we've done. Like,
Okay.
for example, this, and I'm going down to about where you probably see that DEP exhibit with the Whittier feature. Even this
Yep.
existing drainage under the, that was done as part of the extension of Campus Drive some time ago has the flow headed toward the east, not toward the west.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Yeah. But
Um,
I think it's difficult to see without site specific because it's fairly flat in this area. There's not a great change in elevation.
Okay. So DEP is considering that a regulated waterway, obviously,
Correct.
being that they gave it the riparian zone.
Correct.
Okay. I mean, doubtful it's going to have a flood hazard area, I'm thinking.
Right.
And it's completely zone X, but they'll determine that.
That's correct.
And those permits are submitted or to be submitted or pending, I'm sorry?
We submitted both DP, the wetland permits don't have a time limit on when they have to act on them. The
Correct.
flood hazard area permits do have a time limit.
90 days or
Right.
120.
We received
Always
comments from sorry?
I'm sorry, it's always 120, then 30-day extension.
Well, DP
Embedded, but go ahead.
DP asked, we submitted information to DP regarding the flood hazard area.
Mhm.
It was voluminous. There was some additional information they requested from us. They asked us to look at the flood hazard area instead of with the drainage areas we've already delineated, more precise topo beyond our boundaries. So we're in the process of
Okay.
preparing that information to get back to DEP. So officially, the flood hazard area permit that was submitted because it was approaching that, I'll say the 120 or the 90-day clock, we officially withdrew it so that
Oh,
they
you
weren't
did?
forced to act on it. Yes, and we have to resubmit.
Okay. Usually they tell you, they request that you request a 30-day extension so you don't have to, withdraw, but I guess they didn't have enough time even with the 30 additional days.
Right.
I get it. That's fine.
It's, yeah.
Yeah, I know. And of course we'll request, and I think we already do, but just to make sure, we'll request a copy of those approved permits.
Yes.
Once they are signed off.
Right, and part of our submittal is not only notice to everybody within 200 feet, but a formal copy goes to the town, a complete copy.
Okay. I didn't see in the EIS, well, maybe, did I see it? Oh, yeah. The stream corridor ordinance, did you guys apply that? Mike?
Actually, Tom Offenard is on the call, and I think he just unmuted so he can answer and
Okay.
respond to EIS questions.
Great.
Yeah, I believe hi, good evening, everyone.
Good
I
evening. We
believe-
can hear you. We can hear you. Go
Hey,
ahead.
Tom.
Okay, I believe to the extent that the stream corridor easement applies, Mike's plans should show something.
It's a
The stream corridor
150-foot buffer from the top of the bank, if I remember correctly.
Correct. I didn't see on the plan. Maybe I missed it, Mike. If you could direct me.
I don't show a stream corridor along the state open water at the rear of the property or that drainage feature, but we're more than 230 feet from that.
What about, well, if DEP is considering that a regulated waterway feature, I think that would be applicable to the stream corridor ordinance as well.
This piece right here, this ditch,
Correct.
Mhm. What's the depth of that, Mike? Mike Ford?
that's, I'll say, difficult to discern in the field even. It's very minimal. Mr. Offenard maybe looked at it as part of the wetland delineation.
Which feature, Mike? The one in the very back?
In the middle.
No, the
No,
one
the
in
one
the
that
middle.
runs through the middle of the property.
That like Mike is saying, Deborah, that and Mike, that feature is really barely discernible in the field. And I would say, it's 6 inches to maybe a foot. It's really a very, very minor feature. And that's why we didn't really consider it even a water, but DEP asked us to add it.
Does it have a bed and bank? Or is it?
Not as one would typically consider a bank, Mike. It's just a little lower spot through the landscape that water flows through, but it's barely a step down.
Is it more like a swell type feature within the wetland?
Yeah, more or less.
Say that, what
And
did you call it, Mike Foley?
Swell?
Swale in the
Yeah.
wetlands.
See, my question is, oh my,
Well, and Mike, actually, what's I think an important point to understand too is the freshwater wetland letter of interpretation that verifies the limits of state open waters, wetlands on the site that we have right now is valid.
yes,
Didn't
understood.
identify that area.
That's true.
Yeah,
Good
but
point.
you don't have, the LOI doesn't, we're talking about regulated water features right now. Right?
Well,
Yeah, but
they
that
do-
would
they-
identify state open waters, right, Mr. Offenard?
Yes, that's
No,
correct.
they do, but my concern is if DEP is calling that a regulated water feature and giving it a 50-foot riparian zone, that's telling me that our 150-foot stream corridor zone would be applicable as well. And I think there's different things in the ordinance that you can still hopefully do what you need to do, but you may need to, I don't know, do mitigation. I don't know. I think you need to address, or I will recommend that the project addresses section 188, chapter 64 for the
Right,
Hillsborough
Right,
stream
natural
corridor
features.
ordinance applicability to that regulated waterway as designated by DEP going through the middle of the site. And whether or not, it impacts your project or does not impact your project, I can't say now. I don't know. That's why I'm asking you guys to look into and determine.
right. That'll be in the report,
Okay.
correct?
Understood.
I get it. Swales are what they are, but we can't not enforce a stream corridor ordinance if DEP is regulating that as a regulated waterway with a riparian zone.
It's kind of a gray area.
Absolutely, but we
yeah.
have to go by what
We have to,
know.
but we have to address it.
Yeah.
Are you looking for, is there an approval for the Delaware Canal Commission?
We are not in the DNR Canal Commission review zone. This portion of Hillsborough is not in their review zone.
I am shocked at that.
You're in zone B though, but
I
that's not
thought
reviewable,
everything in
right?
Hillsborough was in zone.
No, we're not in their jurisdictional area at all.
Really?
Not even zone B?
Correct.
Oh,
Debbie,
okay.
this is Dave.
Yes, Mr. Maskey.
We requested the applicant to submit a letter to DRCC and get that in writing from DRCC that
Okay,
the applicant can't unilaterally decide that.
okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, we made that submittal that Mr. Maskey just referred to. And the documents we're referring to are the GeoWeb. The same, I think that probably this, one of the layers you're looking at, Mike, that for the drainage area.
And I
So yeah,
see
that
also,
application verifying non-applicability with DNR has been submitted. Same for, while our traffic is all directed straight out to the state highway, but we're not doing any work within a state highway right away, nor are we changing anything on Route 206. The township asked us to submit a letter to the New Jersey Department of Transportation requesting a non-applicability determination, and we've done that as well. And that's pending.
Mike, real quick regarding the tree removals. So you're required to plant 1,194 trees. You're incorporating the hardship waiver, and so therefore planting 354 trees. So that difference is being applied to a monetary contribution?
Now, the economic hardship waiver puts your financial obligation, either on-site, off-site, or contribution, at a ceiling of 1.5% of your total construction costs. So that would be it. And that's what we've requested as part of our application to the planning board.
So we meet the requirements of that ordinance provision, Mr. Ford, is really what you're saying, that affords the applicant relief.
Right.
Okay.
Subject to the
Mike-
planning board.
Mike Ford, in my review of the application, there was a discrepancy. The EIS said that it would be an off-site contribution, not a waiver.
Yeah, that-
Or requesting a waiver, so you'll need to get that straightened out. Which is it?
Thank you, David. I know I saw it somewhere.
Yeah.
But you're saying that it's which one, Mike?
It's no contribution, the economic hardship waiver, and the EIS by Equal Sciences will have to be amended to correct that discrepancy.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, we'll do that.
And obviously, I know tree seasonal timing restrictions will come from the DEP permits. Northern long-eared bat, not that it's actually there, but they might institute a tree cutting timing restriction. We obviously would abide by, DEP's conditions for tree cutting timing restrictions. And in that regard, Mr. Offendorf, do you just happen to, I didn't see a date on your IPAC request. I saw the natural heritage, but I didn't see I assume it's 2020 or 2019. Do you know
Yeah,
that by chance?
It should be sometime very close to the date of the EIS, Mike, probably in June.
Okay. Yeah, usually it's on the footer, or maybe it got turned off when you printed it.
Yeah.
Can you just resubmit us one with a date, please?
Yes.
I looked on every page, I didn't see one.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now, and I don't see it either. So it may have gotten clipped off the bottom.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. But just so we can complete our file, that'd be appreciative. I think that's all I had, Debbie.
Okay, right. Any other comments or questions from the commission? No? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to all of you.
Thank you all.
Chairman, it's Fred. Do you want to open up any public
Oh,
comment?
Fred, thank gosh you remind me to do that. Because that just does not stick in my head. Yes, please do.
All right,
Thank you.
I do see one hand raised at this time. So if
Okay.
anybody from the public has comments or questions for the applicant, please raise your hand. I'll unmute you one at a time. Please state your name. If you could spell your last name for the chairman and your address, that would be great. We'd appreciate it. So Ms. Solik, or Mr. Solik,
It's me, Vivica Sulich, Sulich.
thank
I'm
you.
at 161 Johansson Avenue.
Thank you.
There was a comment, some concern about whether or not we flood. Well, there are certain areas in the neighborhood that do. Kimberly Road floods whenever we have the major storms like Hurricane Sandy and things like that. And then Dukes Parkway East floods when there are heavy rains a lot of times.
Okay.
And we can't get out of our neighborhood when that happens.
Okay. Thank you for that information.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Is there anyone else on the, any of the
Yes,
public?
yes, let me get to the next one. Ms. Sawadi?
Hi, Marianne Sawade,
Sorry.
S-A-W-A-D. That's okay, common mistake.
Your address?
I live at 142 Johansson Avenue.
Okay.
I just have a few comments based on what I was listening to here. They had said the land disturbance is essentially the same portion as the proposed approval from 20 years ago. That was approved early in '99 and Floyd happened later that year. Is that why you stopped building? Because it was all water? Just curious. The whole neighborhood was isolated and flooded.
Mr. Weiss is on the call.
Yes, hi. I can answer that question. It was the proposed approval, the proposed building was an office flex type of building. And at that point, literally the bottom dropped out of that market. So while we went ahead and we did clear all the trees right up to where we were allowed to on the towards the wetlands, that product became not really financeable, and we just stopped before we got going. And that's the reason. It had nothing to do with any environmental conditions or any weather conditions. It was completely financial conditions.
Okay, thank you. And then in 2008, you also applied to do a similar type of project. The town declined it for many, many reasons. A lot of it was that they weren't convinced that the relief requested would be beneficial to the surrounding neighborhood. You know, I live on lot 24, and if you look at where lot 24 is, that's right where that Duke's Brook points right at it. I have that easement, the swale behind my house. All the homeowners are responsible for maintaining that. You know, even just this week, there's standing water in it right now. There's inches of standing water in it. I can't imagine how much more water we're going to have just soaking up in our backyards. I mean, my yard is mud right now. You know, with a third of that property, all the uplands being covered with impervious coverage. And, you know, even with the underground basins, I just don't believe water's got to go somewhere. It's going to go around, and it's all being directed right to my property. You know, I have to tell you how I have a problem with that as it is. So that's my issue. The underground stormwater system you're talking about is going to be underneath the driveways and parking lots. Is that correct?
That's correct.
I was here. Can it support the weight of all the cars that will be parked on there? Is it plastic or is it steel? What is it made of?
No, well, we specify a type of facility. Ultimately, there's many different suppliers, so it could be different materials, but typically it's a plastic type of material.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, I'll say, more and more common as a stormwater management strategy.
How thick is that plastic, sir?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear your question.
How thick is that plastic? Say if there was a major emergency, a fire in those apartments, could it withstand the weight of 4 fire trucks? And
Yeah, it's designed to handle H20 loading, which is a loading classification, which would include fire trucks. Right now, there's a project under construction on Route 206 near Bottle King that has a similar underground facility, and its construction is reviewed and approved by or inspected by the township engineering department. So these are, they're manufactured to withstand the loads.
okay. You also spoke about the system reducing the flow, and you kind of lost me. It was 1 year storm, 2 year, 10-year storm. I didn't really follow what you were trying to say, and I don't understand how would it reduce the flow?
Okay.
Where does it go? Is it being directed towards my property, to the swale that I maintain, and that would inevitably, erode my backyard?
Here, let me. I'm going to share screen again. Your 24.
Yeah.
The underground basin is at this location now. I'm highlighting with the hand. It's piped directly into the existing storm drainage pipe at the rear of the property. So it doesn't discharge towards your property. And then these stormwater management facilities are designed to provide for a storage volume where the runoff is collected and released at a controlled rate. So
Release
that,
where?
sorry,
Where does it discharge? Where does it release?
that pipe I just described, we have a direct pipe connection to the existing storm drainage pipe at our northeasterly property corner. And that's beyond your property and on this existing drainage system that runs along the rear of our property, that's subject property.
Is that existing, or is that to be added?
No, that's existing.
Okay. There is a neighbor that has been here forever. He's very knowledgeable, Mr. John Hurley. And he took a walk back there with several people. He just wrote a letter to the Environmental Commission actually yesterday. He doesn't think you've received it yet. But he said the drainage from Campus Associates should not deviate from its current natural flow nor the elevations. So he was arguing that the elevation was too low. And I'm sure you're maybe aware of that, and that may be part of your plan, but there's a lot of concern about this water flow to all of us here and on Johansson and beyond in the neighborhood. Where would the recycling and garbage bins go in this community?
They're along our northerly tract boundary. Our immediate neighbor to the north is lands owned by DOT. It's part of that jug handle that's on Route 206. That would be where the trash enclosures are.
Where the hand is, on to the left, you said?
Oh, here's one trash enclosure on the west side of the project, and then a second trash enclosure on the east side of the project.
Okay. What does that wetlands buffer consist of? Is it just the trees? Are they small trees? What diameter would those trees be?
I think that the trees throughout the site are various diameters. And what area are you speaking of with regards to the wetland buffer?
You were talking at great length about the buffer along the Duke's Brook. And we're pointing along to those trees.
Our only disturbance of the wetland buffers, not the wetlands, the wetland buffers for regrading is around the project is this small area right here behind building 1, another small area behind building 3. You can see it's just a sliver of land.
Okay.
That's being compensated for by increasing the buffer in this area behind building 2, as well as this area here beyond where the parking is.
Buffer just means open space. I thought you were saying you were going to be planting or putting a berm or something.
Oh, I thought you were referring to the wetland buffer. I
think I am.
Okay, well, but there's another buffer that's required as part of the ordinance. This is our top of the page is our easterly tract boundary.
Correct. And it was
Part of the-
100 feet was required, and you had said you had 250 feet.
Right.
But
There's a
still,
100-foot
you
buffer
couldn't build there
required.
anyway.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So that buffer, it's not associated with wetlands. It's associated with a buffer requirement from an adjoining residentially zoned property. You know, albeit this is a residential project as well, but the buffer required as part of the zone adopted is a 100-foot buffer. And this is what I'm highlighting now with the hand.
Yes.
This is the required buffer limit, this 100-foot. And we're providing, our nearest disturbance is 230 feet. And that's where my hand is now.
Correct. And that's all wetlands though, right? With the dark green.
Yes, most of
Right.
it is. A substantial
build
portion of
there
it is
anyway.
wetlands or wetland buffer, right?
Okay, thank you. Just one more question. The trees that you're removing, you said you were removing 1,194 trees, is that correct? Approximately?
Yes.
Okay, do you know that one?
No, I'm sorry. That was the mitigation requirement. We're removing 597 trees.
Okay. Was the amount of water that these trees absorb factored into your calculations in removal? So, you know, one tree in one day with a 1-inch diameter absorbs 10 gallons. So just say 11,000 gallons of water to air in one season for an average tree. Were those calculations factored in at all to the storm water runoff? Those trees will not be there to absorb them. You're asking for a waiver, hardship waiver,
Right.
to not have to replant as many trees again. My concern is that those trees do a lot for my property and for keeping less water in it.
The answer is yes. The way stormwater analysis is conducted, it doesn't consider land cover. That is, woods, lawn is different treated than impervious coverage. So part of the stormwater analysis includes consideration in changes in land cover. That is taking a wooded area and turning it into asphalt.
Okay. Is there any consideration for if these calculations are wrong and my house and neighborhood floods after this development is built? It's rhetorical, honestly, but you know, projects have been known to be put up and be disastrous for properties around it. And if my property is deemed a flood zone after this project, I will be hurting financially. I won't be able to sell my house. So that's a major concern of mine as well. I'm asking the board to deny this application and deny the waiver for the trees. And I speak for many in my neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, again, please state your name. If you could spell your last name and address for the record. Okay, can you unmute yourself? You're on mute. Oh, there you go.
Hi, Maria Janusik, 720 East Freck Avenue. Starting from the beginning of everything that was explained by Mr. Ford, this is going to be four buildings being built, 4 apartment buildings?
Yes, four apartment buildings and a clubhouse, and it's a apartment rental.
So, and all of it's going to be rental units. And how many total rental units will there be? How many units per apartment building?
There's about 24 units per building.
20. So each apartment building has 24 units.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so that's 4 times 4, 6, 7, 96 units, 96 apartments.
Yes.
Okay. So now, what were you saying about the impervious coverage, because you were saying something that previously, I guess, when this was for industrial use, this property, impervious coverage could be up to 60%.
Correct.
But now it's been changed to, for this housing complex, it's changed to 30% impervious?
Correct.
Okay. And that's total, the buildings, the parking, everything that's going to be covered is only going to be 30%.
Correct.
That's the allowable, that's not the proposed.
Right. The proposed is less than 23%.
Proposed is less than 23%.
Yeah, so
Okay.
we're not up to the 30 max allowable.
Okay. Now, in regard to the recycling, why is this complex going to have a private waste hauler instead of pickup by the county?
That's typical for an owned, a rental complex, as opposed to like a single family house where the county picks up the recycling.
And this is contracted by whom?
The owners of the facility.
Oh, so the owners, okay.
Yeah.
Whoever they choose to contract that with.
Okay. Excuse me. So there would be separate trash pickup and separate recycling pickup?
Right, separate bins, just like any other apartment complex in town where trash and recycling are collected in that central location, but segregated in cans for appropriate,
pickup.
I believe that, Mike, I believe that the town takes the garbage and the recycling might be private. We can clarify that, but it's my understanding that the garbage pickup would be done by the town.
Now, actually, Hillsborough is private garbage too.
Yeah, we don't have township garbage.
Yeah.
That's why I said we clarify.
Okay, so it's private private for both trash and recycling separately. Okay.
Correct.
There was an application submitted by this applicant to the Somerset County Planning Board also.
Correct.
Have they received approval from the Somerset County Planning Board?
They have just asked us to confirm that they don't want us to pick up their recycling. And that's the only thing, that there's no objection otherwise. This is a September 16th, 2020 letter from the Somerset County Planning Board to the Hillsborough Township Planning Department, or Hillsborough Township Planning Board.
Uh-huh. So what did the applicant have to actually apply for to the Somerset County Planning Board?
Site plan approval.
Only about the recycling or anything else?
No, they apply for site plan approval.
And they got that approval already?
No, like I just said, there's a clarification that the county asked for us to consent and verify that we don't want them to be responsible to take our recycling. And I think this is actually, I'll say, preferred by the county, because I think recycling materials haven't become popular, or I'll say profitable. And this is typical for most apartment complexes that I've worked on recently within the township. Since the private waste hauler is contracted by the owner, so is the private recycling waste hauler.
The copy of the letter from the Somerset County Planning Board is, you can also see that at the planning office. It's part of the file.
Okay, so that's the only thing that came from the Somerset County Planning Board regarding the recycling, but they haven't given approval for the site plan. That's still with the county planning board. The site plan.
I actually, as part of my introduction, cited the approvals we have. The Somerset Union Soil Conservation District. We also have an NJDP stormwater discharge general permit GP or 5G3, which is for the stormwater discharges during construction. That approval was granted by the state on September 22nd, 2020.
2020. Okay, now this was something new that was approved, because you were saying something that the applicant had gotten approval from somewhere 20 years ago for a prior project.
Right.
Is this was a new application approving this site, this
That's correct.
application?
Yes.
Okay, now that in regard to that application 20 years ago, was that the same owner, the same applicant?
Yes, it was.
Yes, it was.
Same owner, same applicant. Okay. Now, also regarding the letter of interpretation, did you say that was submitted? That you have gotten a response from the NJDEP regarding that letter of interpretation?
Yeah, yes, we have.
So, what exactly does that involve? This letter of interpretation?
Well, it's the way that the NJDEP establishes basically the limits of the wetlands and the wetland buffers that they regulate activities in. So the wetlands are flagged in the field and surveyed, and that map is sent down to the NJDEP, and they conduct a field inspection, and often ask for changes in the delineation. But ultimately, they issue a letter which approves the map, which shows the surveyed limits of wetlands, and it also provides the width of the buffer or the setback from the wetlands, which is 50 feet.
So you have all of that. So you have all of that from the NJDEP. So actually, who you would send the applicant would send what's being shown, what he's showing as the wetlands on the property, and then the Department of Environmental Protection looks to see if that's accurate. Is that how it works?
That's correct.
Okay,
Yes.
and so you received a response from the NJDEP that everything that they were provided matches up.
Correct.
And again, this is all information that you can look at the planning office if you'd like to review it there.
Okay. Now, I think you also had mentioned that there were some wetland buffers that would be disturbed.
Well, there's going to be some trees, some planting in the wetland buffer where there's that's not wooded now. That kind of activity in a wetland buffer is not regulated as long as you're planting native species. So they can do supplemental planting in the wetland buffer. They can't cut trees, but they're not planting. They're not doing that. They're not proposing to do that without a permit.
So a wetland buffer would have trees that you're not permitted to cut.
Yes.
Is that what you're saying? So you
Yes.
can't cut any trees that are part of the buffer of the wetlands, but you can remove plantings and then replant.
You can not remove plantings. You can plant like lawn areas or field areas, which we have on this property, with native species.
So you would be removing something and then replacing it, or why would you?
The only place we're doing any removal activity in the wetland buffer, we're asking for approval from the NJDEP to do that via an averaging plan, as Mike Ford described. And in a buffer or wetland transitionary averaging plan, you basically request approval to make the buffer a little smaller in one area, and to compensate for that reduction, you make the buffer bigger in another area, so that in the end, there's no change in the amount of wetland buffer.
And actually, your compensation is larger than what you're reducing. Is that correct, Mike Ford?
Correct.
So they're actually creating more buffer than they're taking away. Do you have any other questions?
Yeah, I do. Actually, there were quite a few questions that I had.
Because we do
So,
have
all right,
another, we do have another application, but go ahead.
Okay, so, all right, so then you're going to need to have buffer compensation because you're going to be reducing buffer in some areas.
That's correct.
So when you reduce in one area, even though you're compensating somewhere else, that doesn't have any kind of impact with flooding?
It shouldn't, no, because the amount of buffer stays the same.
Yeah, but it's not the same in
And
one
flooding
area
is
where
flooding is really-
the water can expand. All right, and then regarding to the NJDEP sewage treatment, who takes care of the sewage? Let me see. Is that Hillsborough Township's responsibility? Who handles the sewage for? Who will be handling the sewage for this?
Let me answer your question. I think I know it. There's the public sewer in Hillsborough Township is managed by the Hillsborough Township Municipal Utilities Authority. They own and manage the collection system. Then ultimately the wastewater, all of wastewater from Hillsborough goes to the Somerset Raritan Valley treatment facility. And both of those agencies will have to approve the project.
So the Municipal Utilities Authority and the Somerset what?
Somerset Raritan Valley Sewage Authority.
Somerset Raritan Valley Sewage, okay. All right. In regard to those trees, that was a question asked by a few people, but it's just kind of strange how you're going to remove 597 trees and you need to replace 1,194. And so that's got to be important to replace trees. What's happening with this? You said saying something about no contribution. So what's being done as far as this economic hardship waiver? What actually is being requested?
The Hillsborough Township Code, section 188-163E, provides for any applicant to request an economic hardship waiver where the total mitigation requirement value, that is the cost, would not exceed 1.5% of the total cost of the project. And that's what we're applying. That's in accordance with the township code, subject to the planning board approval. Yep.
Okay. All right. Now, all right. So these are the waivers that are being requested. Does this also include the bulk variances?
The variances, one of the board members asked me to highlight earlier. I went through all those already.
You went through the bulk variances?
That's correct.
Yes, he did.
Okay, but which one? So what were the variances? What were the variances versus the waivers? Waiver is for the economic hardship waiver. Everything else is a variance.
We have the sign height variance, the project sign height, and the community building height variance, and the relief for exceedance of the residential maximum 20% disturbance of wooded areas.
Okay, all right. That was the maximum of wooded areas. All right. So the maximum disturbance is allowed is 20%, and you're asking for 38. Is it 38.3%?
Yes.
Okay, that's quite a bit of a change in it's almost double the double.
That's not disturbance,
wooded
Mike.
area.
Isn't that tree removal?
That's tree removal.
That's
correct.
tree removal. That's not disturbance. That's the percentage of trees removed from the site.
Yeah.
Do you have any other questions?
This is the variance requested, the bulk variance. Okay. All right. Oh, one more thing regarding the stormwater. So you said there have to be manufactured treatment devices installed here because of what? Why are these treatment devices needed?
That is to provide for treatment of the runoff to address the water quality of the runoff, not just quantity or groundwater recharge, but now there's an added element of stormwater management that's required for an application such as this to treat for the water quality. That would be the runoff from paved areas.
Okay, so this normally, is this something that every housing development needs, or is it because of the wetlands here that you need to have this manufactured treatment device?
Well, when you say every housing project,
Yes.
I can tell you that in Hillsborough, any application is required to meet the state stormwater management requirements. And with regards to water quality, that is removal of the total suspended solids to a level of 80%. And that's what porous pavement, manufactured treatment devices, sand filters, rain gardens, things of that nature address stormwater quality treatment.
Okay, so are all of those required for this development?
Like I just said, the water quality standard is applied to this project, and we've met it by virtue of the manufactured treatment devices which filter the stormwater from the paved areas, as well as there's some porous pavement areas on site that provide for water quality treatment.
So Mike, these manufactured treatments are removing solids, total
Right,
suspended solids from the water prior to being discharged.
That's correct.
So it's cleaning the water before it gets discharged.
Cleaning the water, correct.
Correct.
Okay, all right, all right. And so there was the permits. You said that you submitted a permit. A permit was submitted for. Oh, that was the flood hazard permit was submitted, and then it was withdrawn.
That's correct. The state asked for additional information, but because of the time constraints for the state to review the application, we withdrew the application so that we would then resubmit the application and provide them with ample time to review it.
So it hasn't been resubmitted.
That application and agency approval is not in hand, but will be certainly, it's one of the criteria that we have to meet as part of the application, and we will.
Okay, so my question is that the flood hazard permit has not been resubmitted yet.
That's correct.
And what other permits, the wetlands permits have been submitted?
That's correct.
But you haven't gotten a response yet from the NJDEP?
They're reviewing it.
They're reviewing it. Okay, so you haven't gotten a response from them?
No, we
yes or
haven't.
no yet?
The review process down at the DEP right now is very, very slow due to the fact that most people are working remotely. And things are taking much longer than they have been in the past. Do you have any other questions?
Yeah, just one. In this curiosity,
Okay, because we have another application to hear. Go ahead.
What is a swale? Hello? Can you tell me what is a swale?
A swale is something that transmits water, just like a ditch or a stream or a river. And different agencies define a swale differently. But that would be a small, excuse me, that would be a small, I'll say shallow, not well-defined drainage feature.
Okay, so that's man-made?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
But then again, for projects to direct water to a inlet within a project, I, as a design engineer, might direct as part of the grading, a grading feature that includes a swale to direct drainage. So it can be man-made.
Okay. All right then. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Fred,
Okay,
do we have anybody else?
Yes, we do have more. So again, please state your name and spell last name and address for the record, please.
First name is John. Last name is Tutunjan, Tunjian. And address is 150 Johansson Ave.
Thank you.
So
Go ahead, sir.
these I guess under the parking lot, you're going to have these catch basins, and then that water is going to go where? Is it going to go into the main drainage, let's say pipe that drains all the water currently away from our properties? Is that going to take on all that water?
The underground basin collects runoff from inlets within the parking area as well as the roof runoff, runs through a controlled outlet structure, and then the controlled outlet structure drainage pipe ties into the existing storm drainage pipe at the rear of this property.
Okay. So this is, so 150 is actually lot 27. There's an easement between my property and my neighbors, which is lot 28. All the water from our current complex on the rear end of our complex, it goes through the, obviously the drainage off the streets, and it shoots right behind our house. And there's an open grate there. That open grate, I'm very aware of, because this 1 in 100-year storm is more like probably about 10 storms in the last 25 to 30 years. If I go back behind my house and any really significant rain, that's water's coming up and spewing out of that grade, not going in. So this is our concern as a neighborhood. When that water, if it can't take on any more water, it's supposed to go to what you have on your diagram. You even call it an assumed state open water. That is very assumed, because that ditch is never controlled, because you want the neighbors to keep that clean. We're relying on that waterway, and in a major storm, if there's any blockage, there could be a tree that falls, could be a tree that fell for 5 years. If you go and walk that ditch, as a neighborhood, we're relying on that. And I'm imploring you, if that gets blocked, it comes flying back to our houses. The water can't take any more storage anymore going through the main, which you're already tapping more water into. The water runs then through our houses, and the whole back end of our complex will flood. Be about 10 houses. And the reason we know this is in 1970, before they put in that new drainage solution, those 10 houses flooded. The real problem we have, unlike Kimberly, even when it floods, if the back end of our complex floods and these 10 houses flood, there's nowhere the water can even recede. We will be sitting with water in our houses for some period of time, and you will destroy our real estate value. So my real problem here is, and I think my neighbor mentioned it, what happens if this doesn't go well? This 1 in 100-year storm comes 2 years after you build your complex, and we do go underwater. And it can very well happen, because matters what you're saying as an engineer and what you're looking at, we live it. It's bad enough that me and 2 or 3 of our neighbors in bad rainstorms are walking and panicking. You can't tell us this isn't a major problem. I mean, this is a major, major problem. And we're always, every rainstorm, anytime you predict a major storm coming, we lose sleep. We don't sleep because we see the water running. We see where it's going. And then there's just so you know, anyone on the committee wants to go and walk, up on the northwest corner of this property is right now a catch basin. That catch basin, go and walk it. I want you to see it. It's 200 feet by 200 feet, maybe 6-7 feet deep. That fills up on a regular basis. That amount of water It fills that up into a lake. When it goes up and over, it flows down this so-called assumed state open waterway. It happens once or twice a year. So if that can't take that kind of water, and that's water coming off the campus, I'm assuming these underground, I don't know how many cubic square feet of water that is. It's nowhere near the amount of cubic feet that catch basin is taking on. I just can't see how this is going to work well for us. I really can't. And my fear is if it doesn't work well, who's responsible? I mean, where do we go there? Now, I could tell you a little history that I know of. When they built our complex, it didn't go well. And maybe Mr. Ford would know this. They had to spend millions of dollars. The township, after the builder left from our complex, he was nowhere to be found. The town had to put in all these storage lines that we're talking about right now. So I mean, what I'm asking for is that main line that you're talking about, that we rely on for our drainage out of our whole community. I don't think it can take on any more water. So if you're adding how much water onto that main, we are going to have some major problems, and we need whoever has to do a study or capacity test has to be done. I really think this has to take much more time. You can't make this go quick because the township, Hillsborough Township, is going to be left hanging with this. And right now, the top of the block floods. We know that. Kimberly will flood. We can't get out of our complex. This has happened numerous times over the last 10 years. That's documented to the point where there's no emergency way for us to get out. No way for police officers to get in or a fire truck. The back end of our complex floods. We have some major problems like we've never seen before. You're going to deem it like a Manville, that dead valley they call it. That's going to be our complex. And that's all I got to say. I'm not an engineer. I just know what I see every time I go back there. A few of our neighbors go back there. You could take photos now. There's water sitting in it. That assumed state open water ditch that you're using, that has to be, something has to be done on that. You have to do construction on that. You're going to have to make that permanent. It can't be just a ditch that you're assuming is going to take on water and flow where it has to go, because it's supposed to flow and go down. When it flows down, it goes into the next major pipe, which in a major flood is not taking on water. Then it's supposed to shoot across Johansson Ave, go down Kimberly, and go down into that's how it's supposed to escape. That's never going to happen the way it is now. You could walk it today and I could tell you it's not going to happen. It's blocked in a million different ways. So, as far as the committee goes, someone mentioned earlier, if you walk back there and see some of the things that you're looking here that you think are assumed open state water, and actually the natural federal water, that water swell, somehow I walked back there, that thing got blocked. That someone blocked that completely. That thing is right now cut off behind where that's supposed to be at lot 24. You go back there, it's blocked off. I think before you start digging and start doing stuff, you better rectify what we have already, because a lot of it is not what you're saying it is. It's being assumed that the water is going to flow. I need natural water flow, because I can tell you 100%, I am 100% confident a major rainstorm, the regular drainage flow is not going to work. It's going to back up. And I want to know, we got to know where that water is going to go. Is it going to go in our yards? Where is it going to go? It's going to go somewhere, and we are lower by 4 or 5 feet. You have a head up on us. You're 4 or 5 feet higher. It's going to flow towards us. And we're going to look at flooding like we've never seen before. You're taking out 1,000 trees. We're going to have property deemed useless. I mean, if we can get flood insurance, great. And I implore you, I'm saying it as from my heart to your heart. If you own a home, I mean, this has to be denied. And as far as a hardship case, and I don't want to be rude here, but you picked the area you picked. You picked one of the worst areas in Hillsborough to build on. For whatever reason, you had to have this thing built. It's in the middle of wetlands. That's your doing. Pay to get the extra trees paid in. You want to be a good neighbor. Don't give us an inch of extra water. If anything, alleviate some water from us. That's what you got to do. Because at the end of the day, I mean, this is not going to work out well. And we're going to be coming in front of the township committee, and we're going to say, now we're all in the water. And then it's too late. Now you can fix it. 5-10 years from now, it's going to be hard, if not impossible. So that's all I got to say. I mean, I really hope this doesn't go through the way it stands now. It really shouldn't be deemed useful for any building at this point. It's way too much water. We've getting out more and more water every year. We all know that. This is becoming more and more of a severe flood zone. You bought the property 30, 40, 50 years ago. If anything, it's the worst time for you to be building it. Not a good time to be disturbing those wetlands. And that's all I got to say. I mean, I don't want to take up too much time. I know you have a lot to do tonight, but I mean, I'm just talking among all my neighbors. We're really panicking. My 2 neighbors moved out already. They're all ready to post for sale sign, and I don't want to do that. I mean, you guys owe us. We've been here for 30 years, 40 years plus. It's our community. You know, I know you guys are, some people here are investors. You invested in land that really shouldn't be built on. It's behind the synagogue. It's not a good area. You're squeezing in as much as you can every square foot, and we're going to be left with the hardship and the panic and once again, that's all I got to say about that. So yeah, I think you all can understand where I'm coming from. I really want everyone to understand and walk those wetlands and understand if you're ever in a bad rainstorm and go back there, you might really look at this and say it's not a little problem. It's a huge problem. I mean, these little swales become major rivers, and that's what we're worrying about. You know, we're gonna be left with the lakefront property, or we're gonna be in the lake, and that's you know, and those people that are gonna be renting are gonna be looking out their windows just like we are and watching helicopters pick up their neighbors, because we've done that twice already since I've been here 20 years. They literally have helicopters picking up our neighbors off the roofs on Kimberly, and you know that if you lived in this township long enough. So we're gonna have more people now looking out the window and can't get out. It's an absurd place to build anything. It really is. It makes no sense to me. I don't know why would even you petition to build there?
Well, this is
Thank
part
you
of a-
very much. Thank you very much. We appreciate all the information.
It's part of a settlement agreement with the town, Madam Chair, as you know, as you're aware. So we're here to answer questions respectfully, but this is part of an inclusionary development, and that's my comment to that, to the gentleman.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Policastro. Fred, do we have any other?
Yes, we have another. Again,
How many
please
more
state
do
your
we
name.
have? How many more do we have?
At this moment, 1.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep. Christy,
Can you? Yes, that's me.
go ahead. Can you
can
please state your name, spell your last name, and address for the record?
Yes, my name's Christy Garcia. I live at 166 Johansson. My last name Garcia. And I just wanted to make my concern is also for the flooding. And my house is an investment that I don't want to lose value on, and I'm just concerned with the history of the flooding in the neighborhood, and it's already pretty much a flood zone. Not really that it's zoned as a flood zone, but I'm just wondering if the builder knows they're building in a flood zone, and they're probably protecting their own investment with the precautions they're taking with all the storm drains and such. How much is our neighborhood really considered when they're protecting their own investment in a known flooding area?
I don't know that that the commission can answer that question.
I'm just like, are we just being considered secondary to their investment? Are they, the flooding, the precautions they're taking for all the storm drains and the water, and it's going to go here and it's going to go there, how much is going away from where they're building and into our neighborhood?
Well, the part of the application is the various review agencies we've already stated, and the stormwater management regulations provide for strict criteria that we have to design to, and that design is ultimately reviewed and commented on by the planning board engineer. So there are, I'll say, regulations in place that would restrict or preclude us from having adverse impacts on storm drainage from the site.
Okay, I'm just trying to figure out where the water that's going to be displaced by the building is going to go where? Do we have a idea of where that water is going to end up?
Well, there's some water that's recharged into the ground via the porous pavement. And then with regards to, for example, the runoff from the impervious, the parking lot may run faster than off of a lawn. That volume of water, stormwater, is captured in this underground, if you will, detention basin, underground basin, and stored and released at a controlled rate such that the peak flow from the site is not exceeded. And as I stated at the very beginning of our presentation this evening, we were aware of the drainage concerns. We met with the township's assistant engineer and discussed with him what was being proposed and the issues that he was aware of. And we've endeavored to provide for a robust underground stormwater management system that not just met the design criteria, but exceeded it by a pretty substantial margin.
Yeah, I was here at the beginning of the meeting when you made all the statements.
Okay.
Is there a place where I can go see it? Because hearing it just once, it's hard to understand it. But if I can see the explanation.
Yes, so you can go to the planning office at the municipal building, and you can look at the file of all the information that has been provided. And I believe it's also on Civic Clerk. And you can look at everything on there also if you don't want to go to the municipal building in person.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. I think we've exhausted everything on this application.
That's it, Chairman. I don't see any other hands raised either, so you can proceed.
Great, thank you. So we'll close the comments from the public for this application. I want
Sure.
to thank everyone for tonight for this application, and we'll move on.
Debbie,
to
can I ask two very, very quick
They better be
questions?
quick. They better
Very
be quick.
quick.
Mike Foley.
One, for Mike. I just want for you to confirm that with the Fisher Wetland general permits and the flood hazard area permit, I know you have to resubmit, but either the property owners within 200 feet were already notified and or will be notified again with the permit applications as per the standard requirement for DEP. And it's with this, okay. And that standard language includes their ability to make public comment to the DEP on those applications?
Correct.
Okay.
They've all been noticed?
Yeah, with the original application and the resubmittal, they'll be noticed again. And we're well aware of the DEP's receipt of comments.
Okay,
and
great.
we've endeavored to address them. Yeah.
All right, perfect. And lastly, number two, with the tree variance, removing the 20% of the existing trees on that residential zone site, is the variance even applicable or available?
Yes.
Because in the reg, section 188, chapter 163, it says, and correct me if I'm wrong, in no case shall more than up to 20% of all the count of trees on a residential zone lot be removed, even with mitigation measures.
Right, and we have to ask for relief. It's not like we could remove more than 20 and then mitigate for it and say we can go over 20. We have to specifically ask for relief.
But
And that same section you're looking at
right
goes on to say that for commercial properties, you're permitted to remove up to 60%.
60%.
And that's what the underlying zone is here, the R. So if you were to develop this in accordance with the I3 standards with an industrial building, similar to what the prior approval was, you'd be permitted up to 60% impervious coverage and tree removal.
Oh, understood. But so what is this lot zoned as?
This is still R3, but it has an overlying zone of the that permits or is part of the settlement agreement and the affordable housing project.
All right, I mean, I'm just looking at this, the chapter, and it says in no case. So to me, there's no variance available, Debbie. I don't know, maybe we can ask for clarification from the planning board.
Yeah.
Dave Maskey?
Yeah, it's there as a variance request. They're gonna have to provide proofs as to why they should be granted that variance.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Okay, we're good. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night. All right,
Okay.
our next application is JSM at Hillsborough. 390 Route 206.
Hello, good afternoon or evening, sorry.
Good evening.
Maybe it was afternoon when we started.
Who said that?
Sorry, Chairman.
Is it still Monday? Go ahead. We
Uh,
have
I'm,
everyone on the line. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think so. Ron, I don't know if you wanted to speak first before we started talking. I kind of give a little bit of intro, or I can do that. It's your call.
No, Brad, I think as a site, I think you could go with it. If I have to add something in, I will. Here we go.
Okay, great.
Mr. Bowler, this is Fred Kinzer, IT. I just made you co-host, so you should be able to share your screen as well. Okay, if you have any issues, please let me know.
Yep, I will start with the existing site conditions, the aerial. Hoping that showed up.
Yep.
Perfect. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. So we're here for JSM at Hillsborough LLC. The applications for redevelopment of a current parcel. It's a block 15501, lots 66 and 67. So it's shown on the aerial plan in yellow here on the site. The current, I guess, front half of the property is currently developed with retail space. I think most of it's vacant currently, but it's existing buildings on the site, about 53,000 square feet of space with parking up front. 206 is on the south side, Andrea is to the east, and then Deanna is to the north, and there's single family homes. I guess it would be the southwest side, and then multifamily to the northwest side, and then a wooded area in the back. I believe the Royce Brook does run to the north of the property, between Deanna and these multifamily homes, up to the north, further up Andrea, and then runs eastbound along this area behind the TD Bank area on site. Currently, the site is approximately 47% paved out and covered with stormwater areas, pavement, sidewalks, building coverage, etc. So I'll pop over to our proposal rendering. And it'll be a little tough to see because we are a larger odd shaped lot, but I'll zoom in as we go. So the proposal is to renovate the retail spaces up front that are currently there and reface them and do interior work with those areas so they'll look new. We also have a proposed 2,500 square foot drive-through restaurant to the southwest corner. So that brings the retail space up to about 56,000 square feet total. And then in the back of the property, we propose 118 units with some affordable housing within the facility in that area for the development. So we do have an access road being modified behind the retail between the residential. We do have compliant parking for the residential on all three sides of the residential building, with the exception of the south side between the retail. There's no parking there. And we do have parking up front for the retail space. Again, modifying that to add landscape islands, reconfigure some parking areas and add the pad site, but we are providing a more, I guess, beautified area that's currently up front there. Once proposed, we do meet the ordinance criteria just under of 69.8%, where 70 is allowed for impervious coverage. The small portion or of the larger portion in the back of the property that's green right now is actually wooded area. So that's going to be maintained, and I'm going to zoom in on that in a second here, because that's a portion of our site is impacted by some of the wetland features and streams in the back area. So beyond Deanna Court, I mentioned there's a Royce Brook is in that area. So Tapa Bank is flagged to the north of Deanna Drive, so off of our site beyond the roadway. And we do have a flood hazard area associated with that as studied by the state. And the DRCC does regulate this site. We honored all the buffers with regards to DRCC. We also have a wetland in this area that has a 50-foot buffer along the bank. And again, that doesn't impact our site. It actually only impacts Deanna Drive, but we are out of that buffer as well. We do have applications into DRCC and the DEP, as well as Soil Conservation County, to review our application. But we did have pre-application meetings with those folks and have incorporated their feedback into our design application. So we do avoid those areas with our development. From a stormwater perspective, we do meet NJDEP, DRCC, and Hillsborough requirements for stormwater with regards to reductions and treatment. This site has significant rock below it. So we did a bunch of infiltration testing and found that the site does not provide currently any recharge on site. It's 0.0 or 0.1 inches per hour from an infiltration perspective. So no discernible recharge based on DEP criteria. So we are requesting an exemption from that criteria for the site. With regards to tree removal, we do have 486 trees being removed on site. That would be above the 20% requirement for the ordinance section, similar to the last application, which results in about 1,000 trees replacement wise, and we have 37 under our chart. However, we do have 243 trees accounted for as part of our application. The reason the discrepancy is in place is a number of street trees and parking lot trees that didn't count towards that requirement. We do provide as many street trees as possible, as many parking lot trees as possible with a parking lot configuration, and as well an enhanced buffer to the west side along the residential properties as best we could for the development. So that's, I guess, the basic intro for our development. And I guess I'll answer any questions the board may have.
I did not see an LOI in your environmental impact statement.
Yes, so that's because a presence absence was issued in April of this year. So I don't know if that was submitted to the board or not, but I can provide that to the board.
Please do.
Yes.
So this is Chris Abrupta. I got a question. You said there's a depth to bedrock, so you can't charge. Do you have any reports on that? I mean, I didn't see anything submitted.
We have a geotechnical report. We have a geotechnical preliminary investigation that was submitted to the township. If the board did not get a copy of that, I'll resubmit to the township directly. But that did indicate rock 2 to 4 feet below surface.
And so
You said 2 to 4 feet?
Yes.
And what were you doing about stormwater management?
We have a underground basin, concrete basin. It's like a vault system that's in the parking lot to the west of the proposed residential building. And then also there's a small version to the northeast as well.
Okay, and what about TSS removal? What are you doing for that?
We have 80% units before they go into the basin. So there's 2 of those units before we enter into the stormwater basins.
So
What kind of units are those?
80%. They're the Kraken units, as listed on DEP's website.
So they're filter units then, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And that's included in the maintenance plan. I mean, we change those every year. What does that cost? Do you have a cost on that, or?
I don't. That's generally a less expensive one than they have in the past, where they have the filters that are like the the powder that's in the canisters. I don't know, but let's call it $5,000 a year plus or minus to do maintenance if we need to do some heavy changes.
And it's confined space entry too, right? They have to go inside to do that, or
Yeah, and the folks that sell us the units generally have a maintenance plan that you can use and sign up for, and they can do it as part of their, their travels through the state.
that's all I have, Debbie.
Okay, thanks, Chris. I know that it was very hard to read, and I guess it was because that these were copies of the site plans, but you show a couple monitoring wells on the front property. I know that there's been groundwater contamination there, and there was no mention of it in the EIS. Can you tell us a little bit about the groundwater contamination? I know that there's a CEA on the property.
Yeah, that's probably actually better for our environmental engineer to handle. So I might defer to them to just give a quick answer on that. Maybe we can run through all the civil questions and answer that at the end if you don't mind.
Sure, that's
Okay.
fine. Okay.
Great.
Yeah, this is Neha with Edgewood. So yeah, there are 14 groundwater wells at the site. You're right, at the front parcel. There's CEA for groundwater contamination. It's an ongoing effort to remediate it. We've hired a consultant outside, SRP, who's handling that CEA. There's an ongoing monitoring associated with it. We're doing quarterly monitoring, so they're handling that remediation. It's ongoing, but there is a CEA. So,
have they delineated the extent of the contamination? Do they know where it's confined to?
Yeah, we have it delineated horizontally and vertically. I think it extends to about 150 feet below the ground surface, and horizontally extends east towards the TD Bank property. So it's across the entire site.
Is it across the site where the housing is going to go in?
It extends east, so it's
So it goes east.
It's underneath both the current existing buildings on the front parcel, and it goes east across Andrea Avenue towards the TD Bank. So
Okay, and what's the contamination?
It's a former dry cleaners operation that was on the
That's what I thought.
historically. It's PCE and TCE, which are chemical compounds associated with dry cleaning compounds.
Yep. Okay. There's 14 wells on it, so those wells will not be disturbed in the
They've been surveyed
in the reconfigure or the front property.
Yeah, they'll remain as long as the CEA is intact. I think the remedial approach is going to be monitored natural attenuation. And again, our LSRP is focused on that. They're meeting all the DEP deadlines with the reporting efforts and such. But yeah, we have them surveyed. Brad, you have all the 14 wells on your site plans, right?
Yeah, and I was actually going to mention the back of the EIS, there's a map from the GeoWeb website that would show a general area. I know it's not exact based on delineation, but it gives you generally an idea of what Neha just described.
There you go. Yeah,
the contamination. Yeah, the contamination from TD Bank, and then also underneath the commercial buildings on our site.
I see.
Yeah, that's exactly right. The CEA, that purple oval shaped on page 30
Right.
EIS.
Brad,
Yep.
can you share that or no?
I can. Give me 1 second. There you go. So our site's on the left here, and then this is the TD Bank over to the opposite side, the east side.
And the hashed marks are it's just the site. So it's the
Yes.
it's
that's
the solid area that's the CEA area.
That's correct. So it's a solid.
Okay.
The hash marks indicate the site. The solid area is the CEA area.
And I think to Debbie's question, it does not extend into the residential area.
That's correct.
Okay.
Right.
Steve Mastropolito, do you have any comments or questions?
Yeah, I have a couple. This is Steve Mastropolito. One question in regards to who is the responsible party for this contamination for the groundwater. I noted on data miner, I think it's Gem Cleaners is listed, but who is the actual responsible party?
Neha?
Yeah, that's a good question, Steve. I think Gems Cleaners was a former tenant on site. So they are the responsible party, but now that we own the site, I believe it's JSM at Hillsborough. I believe the CEA was issued by the DEP to JSM, so it's us. That's a good question.
Okay. So you guys will have, so JSM Hillsborough will have the remedial action permit responsibilities and, making sure there's funding in place for this going forward. Okay.
Yeah, we've been testing the wells quarterly for the past few years, so we're pretty much putting up all the fees for testing and sampling the wells. Yep.
So you're not doing any sort of remediation? You said it's natural attenuation?
Yeah, well, currently we're still sampling the wells. Our LSRP is trying to figure out what remedial approach works best. That'll be ideal to get monitored attenuation. But we're gonna apply for the remedial action permit with the DEP very soon, once we figure out the remediation approach, so.
Okay. Go ahead, Steve, I'm sorry.
Okay, yeah, I just noted the RI report was submitted April 2019, so you will be submitting, I'm assuming, a remedial action work plan, and then, with the groundwater RAP application to
Exactly,
go for the
yep.
M&A route. Okay.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the RAR is in last April. And then I think we're on a strict deadline with DEP on when to submit the RA work plan and the RAR eventually. So our LSRP is on top of those deadlines and the reporting. So.
Yeah, I did notice that you guys were meeting all the deadlines. How about from a vapor intrusion perspective? Is there any concern with the existing site buildings as well as the proposed buildings?
The existing buildings did have a sub-slab depressurization system in place for a few years now. And we recently, just back in June of this year, we got the sign off from DEP that we're good with the system and we could shut it down. So we have decommissioned the system. We turned off the fan. We've been testing the indoor air, the sub-slab vapor, and the ambient air for past couple of years. So the DEP has signed off on that. There's no vapor intrusion concern at the site anymore.
Okay.
How long is that? How long was that system in for?
I'll have to check on the dates for you, Debbie. I'm not sure exactly how many. I think it was at least a few years now. I think it was installed in it was before my time here at Edgewood, at least 4 or 5 years, I would say. But I can get the exact dates for you later on.
Go ahead, Steve. I'm sorry.
No, that's quite all right. I think that's everything I have right now on the existing CEA. One question on the adjacent, I guess that's to the west parcel, if I have my bearings right. Was there any sort of investigation, phase 1, preliminary assessment, anything associated with that done for that parcel?
The wooded parcel, lot 67 to the north?
Yes.
Yeah, we did collect 6 soil samples there. There was a phase 1 done, I believe, but we did soil sampling there and they were all clean. We tested them for pesticides, herbicides, and a few metals, and they were all clean. That was back in 2013. So there's no issues with that lot 67.
Okay, so based on those those analyses, you were assuming that was, I assume, historic agricultural property?
Exactly. Yeah, that was one of the AOCs identified in the phase 1. I don't have a phase 1 on file. I'll have to look into that. But
Yeah, 'cause I did not see one in our application package.
No, we did not. If we could get a copy of that, we would like to see that, please.
Sure, I'll check with Ron and Mark Morello if we have a phase 1 on file. Lot 67. Ron, do you remember off the top of your head if we have one? For that?
I'm sure we do, only because it's typically our policy to do it before we purchase property.
Yeah, it's usually step 1.
We have to, or whether it's done through financing. I'm sure we have one.
Okay, I'll make a note of that.
Will that include the soil sampling results in the phase 1, or is that a separate report?
The soil sampling is usually done as a phase 2, so that'll be a separate report. I actually do have that in my file, the phase 2 site investigation
So
sampling.
you do have a phase 2?
I have the phase 2, but for some reason I don't see the phase 1 in my file.
Okay, so we'd like a copy of both, please.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Steve, anything else?
No, that's everything for right now that I can think of.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks.
Mike Foley?
Of course. So Brad, I think you said that you received the absence presence LOI for the wetlands.
Yeah,
And
it
that
was
there-
April 9th of this year.
And what was the result of that?
No wetlands or wetland buffers impacting the property. And it's both
Okay.
lots.
So I'm confused because in your EIS, you said that there's a freshwater wetland GP6 being submitted to DEP for review and approval for a small isolated wetland pocket in the center of the site, just north of the existing paved area. So what's that about?
Yeah, it was a miscommunication between Edgewood and us. We had thought there might be an opportunity for that to be there, but the DEP confirmed it's no longer there. So that was prepared before we actually submitted the or got the LOI in hand. But we DEP's confirmed it's clear.
So it's because this was revised October 2020, and that letter is from April 2020, the presence absence. So this
Yeah,
is just is an incorrect statement.
Yes.
And you will send us that presence absence, right?
Yeah. Yep.
I didn't see any acknowledgement of the Hillsborough Stream Corridor boundary. 150 foot from the back of the property. Did you address that?
We do have 150 feet from the top of bank to any development area. I think it's 155 or 160 feet. So it's we're
I don't
compliant
believe
with
it's
that
shown though
requirement.
on the site plans.
Yeah, it might just be a layer being turned off, but it's there. We had looked at that before we develop anything.
All right, we're just going to request that you send us a revised plan showing that.
No problem.
But you're telling me that you are outside the 150 foot
Yes, that's correct.
corridor? Okay, yeah, but just submit not the whole set, just whatever sheet shows that would be great.
Yeah, it'd be the overall site plan sheet, but yes, we'll do that. No problem.
We'll make sure we can read it too.
You got it.
So if it has to be, the two smaller ones, please do so.
Yes,
Overlay. E&T species. I know there's none on site, but there was northern long-eared bat, just to the east of your site and on the bank property with the forested area behind there. So my concern is that the forested area behind you is also potential in northern long-eared bat habitat. I know it's not listed as such as on the landscape project, but being similar habitat as what is shown and it's right across the street, that is a concern. So I would just recommend that you abide by the tree cutting restriction, April 1st through September 30th, especially if you're not getting a general permit from DEP. Normally that would be a condition of theirs, but I would make the recommendation that they abide by the April 1st to September 30th tree cutting restriction for potential northern long-eared bat habitat. And again, doesn't mean you can't work during that period. You just have to have the trees down before April 1st. And then, then you can work through it. Just the trees have to be down before then.
We understand your concern. Thank you.
Okay.
Was the wildlife, was there an actual site visit done? Because there was no indication in here is that, what you saw as opposed to what the state says is in the area.
The DEP for National Heritage does not do a site visit, but they will do one during our DEP application, which is in. So I expect they'll be on site in the next 2 months or so.
But did you guys do a walk of the site to look
yes.
for threatened and endangered?
Yes, and we
You
didn't see
did.
anything. The only thing we saw was habitat for chipmunks, squirrels, deer, stuff the basics, but nothing that was out of the ordinary or on the endangered list.
Okay. so there's.
Can you just go through your tree mitigation again? I'm sorry.
Sure. So we have 486 trees removed. The replacement calculations, 1,024. We have 37 proposed, which is again deceiving because we actually have 243 proposed on site. So we'd pay into the mitigation bank.
And those 240 include the street trees and the parking lot trees, correct?
And the buffer trees to the residential, yeah. So we didn't account for those as part of the calculation per ordinance. But
So you are contributing also to the tree mitigation fund, did you say?
to make up the differential, yes.
Okay.
Do you have any idea what that drive-through restaurant's going to be?
Not yet, no.
And do you know?
As with most retailers right now, it's tough to get a tenant when you don't have an approval in hand.
Well, we already have a Wendy's, a Burger King, and a McDonald's. I'm not sure what's left. There's probably plenty left. I just don't know what they are.
Was the bank part of the proposal as well, potentially?
Michael, at one point we showed a bank, but has gone back to a restaurant.
Going back to what? I'm sorry, you broke up.
A restaurant.
Oh, it's the same. It's the same facility. Okay.
Yeah. So one thing I want to.
God knows we have enough banks too.
Yeah. One of the things I want to talk about too is that we would respectfully request, if we haven't done so already, to the planning board, a hardship waiver for the tree replacement. It's affordable housing site, and we could talk about that, both with this board as well as the planning board. But it's one thing that we'd like to talk about because of what's happening on the site. So again, I just want to put it out there so we could talk about it again, either tonight or at the planning board level. I know Dave is on, and we could talk about it as we move forward, but I put that out there.
So you are providing contribution, or you are not, and applying for a hardship waiver?
We'd ask for a waiver for either all of it or partial of the tree replacement due to the hardship of the affordable housing.
Okay, so because it's affordable housing, it qualifies for that? What does the affordable housing have to do with it? I thought it was 1.5% of the construction
Well, because the affordable housing, the way it's worked is you can't require a developer for off-site or on-site improvements that exceed the general development because it's affordable housing site. And again, I'm not the attorney, and we could certainly send a letter into the board to go into that. But, we've done this before where you have an affordable housing site and there's certain off-site cost generative things that happen that we've asked for relief on because it's an affordable housing site. You got to remember that you're doing an affordable housing site here. The affordable units are, they're not income producing for the developer. They're cost prohibitive. So I'm just putting it out there that we may ask for it. We're going to ask for the waiver from the planning board. Whether we have to come back to this environmental commission or not, we'll deal with it. Dave, I see you just put your pretty.
Yes, sir, Ronnie, I'm here.
How are you?
The affordable housing has nothing to do with the tree mitigation, quite honestly. They're allowed to request an economic waiver. If you recall, in the last application campus, that's what they did. That's an affordable housing project as well. And they're looking for the economic hardship waiver. So they have that opportunity. They did not include it in their application. If that is their intention, they need to say that. I'm not sure where they're getting all those numbers from. The only thing I saw was 37 evergreen trees that they were putting in. So if they have more information, they need to get it to us at least 10 days prior to the planning board meeting.
Okay. And we'll do.
Dave.
Thank you, Dave.
And we would get a copy of that as well, Debbie, right?
I'll make sure. I'll make sure of it.
Okay.
Yeah, everything that comes in will go on Civic Clerk, so you guys will have an opportunity to see it there if we don't get it to you individually.
There are
Okay, just let us know
numerous
when it's posted.
variances. There are numerous variances and waivers that you're asking for. Correct with the site.
Yes.
Yeah, there's like 4 pages of.
Oh yeah.
And why is that? If I can just ask a general question.
So some of them, it's, there's a variance because we have a partial situation like along the restaurant for the trash enclosure. It's not screening all three sides, is to provide sidewalk everywhere. So it kind of covers the entire site. Another variance that we have is for connectivity between residential area and the commercial side. We do have one sidewalk. There's a request for two, but the locations where we can cross over are they're tough for a pedestrian to walk because it's a loading area in the back of the retail. So
Yeah, these are design deficiencies. I'm sorry to jump in back to. These are design deficiencies that the applicant has designed into their property. This ordinance was negotiated with this applicant some months ago. The design requirements were there. They know about them. It's supposed to be a mixed-use development with an interaction between the residential component and the commercial component. They failed to do that. So they're going to ask for variances. It'll be up to the planning board whether or not they want to grant them.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Dave.
You're welcome.
I mean, just as a general comment from me, I mean, so nothing's going, I understand that with the current economic situation right now, but there's nothing planned new to go in to that old Cost Custer's building, right? Except for that one Italian restaurant that's already there. There's no plans for anything else to go in, just that the building will remain and the parking around it will be improved. Is that the current
No.
plan for the front portion?
And Michael, just so I could be clear, again, prior to COVID, we had a lot of interest in the site of refitting certain aspects of the existing restaurant building to the left, as well as the restaurant pad. Those conversations have gone somewhat stale, but obviously we're committed to providing the retail and commercial component that's shown on the site plans, but we do not have, as Brad indicated earlier, retailers don't want to deal with when, they want to know with, how quickly. So to talk to a retailer and talk about something that might be approved in 6 months or 8 months or 12 months, they want to know when I'm going to get my space. So it's a little premature until we have an approval in place, then we could chase down the proper commercial tenants and really lock them in. But we have interest in the site, but I'm not going to lie to you and tell you I have an LOI or a signed lease with anybody.
Okay. I mean, just as a resident, I would be concerned because, that's been vacant, 90% vacant for the past 10 years plus. So what's stopping you from getting your residential development that you really want, and then the front just continuing to sit under new ownership vacant for the next 10 to 15 years? I understand it's a COVID situation, but
because it's not our business model. We've
well, okay.
Listen. If I have an old antiquated site that I can't get tenants on, what am I supposed to do? The owner of the company is not going to put a tenant in there he's not comfortable with just to generate rent. He's not going to put a Dollar Tree in there, and I don't mean to speak bad about Dollar Tree, but he's not going to put somebody like that he's not comfortable with generate $6 or $8 a square foot for the sake of generating income. He has certain particulars that he abides by, and he's not going to rent it to somebody for the sake of renting it. He'd rather leave it open to the right tenant. That's just his business model, and it has been. We've been working on this site for at least 8 years about a redevelopment, and we didn't know what the site was going to do. We didn't know how we were going to deal with the site. We didn't know what was getting knocked down, what wasn't getting knocked down. How do you bring tenants in, even prior to COVID? How do you bring tenants in when you don't know what the site's going to do? We've been talking to Hillsborough Township now for years about redeveloping the site. So when you start talking like that, you pump the brakes.
Well, again, it's been empty. It's gonna, we just want to make sure that it's not gonna stay empty. I mean, we're trying to work. Everybody's trying to work together, get something done. We're asking for a bunch of variances, so it's a two-way street, right?
Understood, but it's not our business model to have vacancies. Obviously, if we could put the proper tenants in there, we'd like to do it.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Mike Foley, do you have any other questions?
That's
Did
all
we
I
talk?
got.
Did we talk about the DRCC? I don't know if we talked
did
about
not.
that.
So, yeah. So
Have you applied?
We have applied. There is a buffer that is on our site plan. I'll pull it up again. 1 second here. So the buffer, can you guys see that now? This, yeah. So the buffer is 100 foot buffer on the 100-year floodplain is shown. There's a little bump out here for the buffer. Again, we're avoiding the buffer for DRCC. It's because the inlet has water in it, and it kind of peaks above the grade based on elevation. So we are honoring that full buffer. We have applied to the DRCC. We do meet their technical criteria. So we expect, they'll get processed through quickly.
So that's pending.
Yes.
Okay. All right. And do you need a flood hazard area permit?
That was debatable between the DEP and our application, but because there's a small area back here where we tie our pipe into an inlet that's behind the sidewalk, and it does impact the flood hazard area slightly. You can see this, if I'll zoom in here. Our line delineations, 15 by 5 feet. The DEP asked us to apply to the state for a DEP permit.
Is that a general permit by cert? Do you know?
No, it's actually an IP, unfortunately.
It is.
Yeah, they wouldn't let us go any other route, which is kind of a pain in the butt, but we want to do this right. So
Very much so, yes. And that has or has not been submitted?
that has also been submitted, yes.
And again, we would just request a copy of that approval once received.
Yes, no problem.
All right. Mike, you have any other questions?
No.
Neil, any questions?
No, I don't think so, Deb.
Okay. All right. And you're going to the planning board on the 17th of December.
That's correct.
We will have our report with all these questions in them, or what we've asked for.
Debbie, quick question for you for clarification. Is there anything that we should or need to submit to you prior to you issuing a report may help with your report? Whether it be LOI, that Michael talked about, or whether it be something else that was part of this conversation that might assist in your writing your report, or if your report simply says applicant shall submit a copy of the LOI, then fine. But
Yeah, I think we'd like to see the phase 1 and the phase 2. The LOI was
President's absence.
letter of absence.
President's
Right?
absence, right.
Right. So that could be submitted. That's not something I think that we have to see prior to writing the report. We're going to recommend that you abide by tree cutting timing relative to the E&T. I don't even know what was that last thing we were talking about? The hardship waiver, the economic hardship waiver. Did you want to see a copy of that, Mike?
Yeah, they were going to, well, they have to submit to the planning board. We just asked for a copy as well.
Right. So, and then the flood hazard area, the individual permit, that's just whenever you get it approved.
so it really looks like just the phase 1 and phase 2 is what you need.
At this point, yeah, I would agree with that.
Oh, and that plan just showing the stream corridor boundary line.
Okay.
Yes.
And Ron, we
That
also
should be easy enough, though.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
Ron,
The site plan with
we'll also
the.
reissue the I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, go ahead. I'm
saying-
writing as I'm talking, so go ahead.
I'll also issue the geotech report that was submitted to the town as
All
well,
right.
but we'll reissue that for.
What was that? What was that, Brad?
The geotechnical engineering report.
Oh, the geotech, correct.
Yeah.
The geotechnical report.
Okay.
Yeah, we have that. It's easier for us to. pull
Okay, yes, both of those things. Yep.
All right, so make sure we get that stuff to you ASAP so that you could
Yes,
move forward. from
I
there.
will hold off on writing the report till I get that.
Great, thank you.
Okay, excellent. No other questions for the applicant?
No, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Chairman,
So
you
Fred,
wanna
shall
go to the
we,
public?
is there anybody, do we want to open this to the public?
Yes, we do have a hand raised, so if you want to, or a couple of them raised now.
Okay,
All right, Again, I'll allow you to talk. If you could please state your name, spell your last name, and state your address for the record, please.
Susan Gulliford, Hunt Club Road. I didn't want you to miss me. I have a question about the placement on the restaurant. That's that pale blue square on the lower left of the site plan?
Brett,
Yes.
can you bring up the site plan again?
Yep, I'm doing that right now. Give me 1 second. That's correct.
Okay. I have a question about the placement of that because there's for example, a McDonald's just south of there. And I know a lot of the neighbors who live further south on Meadowbrook, it backs up to them and there's always complaints about the noise, the lights, hours, smells, garbage. Is there any way that could be moved from that corner to the other corner where the traffic is, or is there a particular reason that spot had to be used?
From a layout perspective, this is, a better circulation plan, but they're also, I think, Ron, you may have negotiated through a location based on the agreement as well, correct?
Yeah, this location was based on the coordination with the township with the ordinance. Again, on the right-hand side, pointing towards the intersection where this resident is concerned about, we're concerned about parking in that area for the retail component. And that's why when in the town under the rezoning was to put this, restaurant pad in the lower left-hand corner where it's shown now. We don't expect this to be a McDonald's or a Wendy's. We're looking more of a different style restaurant with drive-through. And I can't speculate.
You're not looking at a Sonic, are you?
No.
No.
Just
No.
checking.
It doesn't fit here anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Of all the spots that could be chosen, that just seemed to be the worst one for the residents of Meadowbrook. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Susan.
Okay, Chairman, there's another hand raised.
Okay.
Again, please state your name and address for the record, please.
Hi, Maria Janusik. Is this entire application?
Marie, excuse me, Ms. Janusek, could you state your address, please?
I'm sorry, what?
Could you state your address, please?
I can't hear anyone. Hello?
Can you state your address?
Oh, 720 East Freck, F-R-E-C-H Avenue, Manville, New Jersey.
Thank you.
Okay, is this entire application under affordable housing?
It's part of the township's affordable housing plan, yes.
Okay, so how many units are this 118 unit multifamily? This is all rental units?
That's correct.
Yes.
And how many are going to be affordable housing?
29
I believe
units total.
29.
Yeah, 29 units total.
29, and the entire project is under affordable housing. As far as wetlands, are there wetlands or not? Because was something said that there are no wetlands and no wetland buffers?
That's correct. The DEP issued a permit or an absence letter that said there's no wetlands or buffers impacting the site.
So did you apply for a letter of interpretation? Is a letter of interpretation involved here at all?
No.
No.
No, the absence takes place of that.
Okay. What's the involvement with the Royce Brook? Because I heard that mentioned earlier.
It's the floodplain for the brook has a buffer on it that is regulated by DRCC. So we have an involvement with the DRCC.
All right. So you submitted an application to them, but you're going to. Is that correct?
No, we've put an application into them. It's pending.
You already put an application in, but you haven't gotten a response?
Yes.
Okay. What does it says? wrote my notes quickly. This site does not have any recharge. Is that correct? What is that?
Yes, it's rock below the ground, so it won't let for water to go into the ground.
Okay. All right. There's also a flood hazard area here.
About 0.1% of the area is in a flood hazard, and we're applying for a permit.
Okay, so all of these things that you're going to be applying for, does this come back to the Environmental Commission or going to go to the Planning Board?
It'll go directly to the planning board.
So after today, there's no longer any involvement with this applicant with the Environmental Commission?
We will write a report based on this meeting and the information that they submit to us, and that will be provided to the planning board for their meeting. And one of our members on this commission sits on is the vice chair of the planning board.
Oh, and who is that?
Neil Julian.
Mr. Julian?
Yes.
Mr. Julian, okay. What's a CEA?
It is Steve, is a contamination exclusion area?
Yeah, I can answer that. A CEA stands for Classification Exemption Area. You're close.
Classification, I'm sorry, what?
Classification Exemption Area, or exception, I believe.
It's exception. A CEA, this is Steve Mastropolito. A CEA is put in place by the NJDEP as a way to restrict the placement of potable monitoring wells within its footprint. Roughly in layman's speak, the DEP doesn't want you to drink the water that is within that footprint, as they deem it does not meet the classification for drinking water standards.
Uh-huh. And so 14 wells were mentioned. Is there city water or do people have well water in that area?
Those are monitoring wells to monitor groundwater. They are not drinking water wells.
Uh-huh. Okay, so monitoring. And so 14 of them showed contamination?
Well, not all 14 were contaminated. There were a few that were on the horizontal extent to delineate the contamination. So there were a few that were contaminated of those 14. We're monitoring to make sure to see where the contamination extends towards. It's going east as a ground or direction flow. So not all.
Oh, okay, well, 14 were mentioned. You say not all, so roughly how many did show contamination?
That's a good question. I would say about 10-ish, give or take. I'd have to look at the data. Can you hear me?
Yeah, no, I get this beeping sound, so I didn't catch what you said.
Yeah, I would say give or take 10 wells showed contamination.
10 wells showed contamination. Okay. So how are you dealing with the contamination?
Well, we're monitoring it. We're sampling the wells every 3 months. We're collecting data. We're collecting groundwater samples. We install a pump down at the bottom of the wells. We collect groundwater samples, send them to a lab. We get the results, and we're just making sure that the contamination is decreasing over time, which it is for the most part.
So how does it decrease? Is that water spreading out?
Well, the nature of the contaminant, we're dealing with chlorinated volatile organic compounds. So PCE and TCE are dry cleaning compounds. So over time, they tend to dilute. I don't know the exact chemistry of the science, but over time it naturally attenuates. Meaning, as a contaminant, it tends to clean itself up, if that makes sense. I'm sure other scientists here can explain that better.
So when was this contamination first discovered?
I believe the initial case was called in 2011 with the soil, and then which was cleaned up. The soil was all clean. The groundwater we had sampled at a heated underground storage tank area, and that's when we found the dry cleaning compounds. I believe that was 2013 is when the case started.
So it's been 7 years already since that groundwater, there's a groundwater contamination. 7 years, and so you're still monitoring and waiting for it to eventually go away on its own.
Yeah, well,
okay. And what is this?
One of the options that our LSRP is considering is an active remediation. So they're getting quotes to see if injecting oxidizing compounds into the wells is an option. It's going to be a very expensive option, but that's something they're considering. But we're still monitoring it and trying to figure out our approach. So.
Okay. Okay, and what was mentioned about vapor intrusion, I understand that.
Well, vapor intrusion is, we sample the indoor air inside the existing buildings. Initially, I think back in 2013 or 2012, levels were above the standards set by the DEP. But based on further sampling that we did of the indoor air, the subslab vapor, we were able to achieve compliance, meaning the contaminants naturally attenuated over time. So the indoor air is all clean now. It's attenuated.
So there were contaminants inside the building as well?
Well, the groundwater, the depth to groundwater was where the contamination initially started, because there was a former dry cleaners and a laundromat at the site. So, and that's how the spill began. That's how the case began. There was a spill of those dry cleaning compounds into the ground surface. So initially it was shallow, and then over time, basically, vertically extended deeper down into some of the wells, which is why we delineated it to about 150 feet below the ground surface. So there's no concern inside the buildings.
I'm sorry, what?
There's no longer any vapor concerns inside the building.
Okay. And someone had mentioned that they did a walk of the site. Was that somebody from the Environmental Commission? I'm on the phone. I don't see anybody. I don't know who's speaking. But
no,
someone
no
mentioned.
No one. I don't believe anybody in the commission has walked this site.
Was it someone from the NJDEP?
No, it was the applicant's engineer.
It was the engineer. Okay. And one more question regarding the this habitat. Was that for the northern long-eared bat? Why do trees have to be cut during a certain time for these northern long-eared bats?
Michael, you want me to take that, or you want to answer?
Yeah, I'll
that?
take it.
Okay.
The northern long-eared bats, they have roosting habitat. We know where they sleep and have maternity colonies in trees with a DBH of 5 inches or greater. So the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has a standard condition in which any projects which are in potential northern long-eared bat tree roosting habitats to not cut trees between April 1st and September 30th. That's the time when the bats would usually roost during the summer months. So obviously you don't want to cut down the trees when the bats are in the trees roosting. So that's why you either want to cut the trees down before April 1st, before they get there, or after September 30th, after they leave.
And so what's the concern when they want to come back and they don't have trees anymore?
They go to the neighboring tree.
They go find another tree to hang out in.
And actually, I should clarify, northern long-eared bats roost in trees, DBH 5 or greater, that are dead and decaying and hollowed out inside. That's where the cavities are for them to live in. So it's not like they're nesting in, every mature deciduous tree you see out there, but they were recorded in the bank site next to it. So as a preventative precaution, I recommended that they still institute that tree cutting restriction to be conservative.
Okay. All right. And so the applicant also is asking, just reiterating what I've heard, the applicant will be asking also for a economic hardship waiver on the trees. And 240 trees are going to be planted, 486 removed, 240 planted?
Correct. They're removing 486. They proposed, there's 240, that includes the buffer, the street trees and the parking lot trees.
Okay.
They're required to put in over 1,000, and that's the difference would be the economic hardship waiver.
Okay. And okay. All right then. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Debbie,
Fred, do we have anybody else on the line?
Debbie, can I ask a question before you go on? So
Please do.
Yeah, so you have bedrock where you want to recharge groundwater, but apparently you don't have it where there's dry cleaning substances because it's down to 150 feet. I'm a little confused by that because it's the same site, right? So I think we really need to see that geotechnical report because I don't believe that bedrock is 30 inches below the surface because it doesn't sound like it is when we're talking about the contamination from the dry cleaners. Because I just heard it's in a well 150 feet deep, right? So it's moving downwards, moving vertically, right? So I think stormwater would also move vertically through the ground and be able to recharge. So
requirement
may not be required. So
right. So there's the requirements for basins when you design them underground for recharge would be in the 0.4 inches per hour. We're getting in the range of 0 to 0.1 inches per hour. So there certainly is water that would get into cracks in the bedrock and get down there, which might be what was happening.
I'd just like to see the data because the web soil survey says it's as high as 6 inches per hour. So I just like to see your reports because I haven't seen it. So
no problem.
We'll make sure that happens, Chris. Thank you.
And Chairman, there are no more hands raised.
Okay, so we will get that report to you. And we'll wait for we'll wait for the phase 1, phase 2, the geotechnical report. And prior to actually writing the report. So as soon as you can get that stuff to us, I can start drafting. All right.
Sounds good.
Great. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Have a good night.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Do we have any old business we need to consider? Consideration of new business? And we'll open it up one more time for any business from the floor on topics other than these 2 applications.
Okay, anybody from the public have any topics not based on these 2 applications that haven't been discussed yet? I see none, Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you, Fred. Okay.
Yes.
Chris, did you want to bring up anything or do you want to wait for another meeting to do that? What we talked about earlier today? Chris Abrupta.
yeah, let's wait for another meeting. It'd be fine.
I'm good with that.
It's a little late.
All right. All right. Good meeting, everybody. Thank you very much. I need a motion to adjourn, please.
I motion
Okay.
to adjourn. Mike Foley.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Who said that?
Steve.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night.
Thanks,
You too.
Chairman. See you guys.
Thank you.
Good
Thanks,
night.
guys.